Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Cnbc TV 18 presents Digital India Vision 7.0, powered by Mastercard. Please welcome Sukhmani Sadana, your host for the evening.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Cnbc TV 18 presents Digital India Vision 7.0, powered by Mastercard, ushering in India's Techade. I'm your host, Sukhmani Sadana. How's everyone doing today? Good? I need some more energy, please. Great. Well, Digital India Vision is our annual Digital Leadership Summit, where top policymakers and industry captains share their vision and talk about ways to accelerate and optimize the ongoing digital revolution that will define India's Techade. It is a forum dedicated to celebrate India's digital success stories, discuss key sectors that are utilizing digital technology to scale up their businesses, and deliberate on how technology can further adopt and deploy in every sphere, aiding India to become a global leader in advanced digital technologies. For this year's edition, Digital India Vision 7.0 aims to connect all the dots like digital infrastructure, e-governance, electronics, manufacturing, and modern digital laws with a focus on digital privacy, cybersecurity, capacity building, and skilling to catalyze new India's Techade. Over the last 4 weeks or so, we have been engaging and having discussions with various stakeholders of Digital India, from policy makers to prominent voices of corporate India, who are leading the digital transformation of our economy in the form of short interviews, news stories, etc., across TV and digital platforms. With this event, we shall culminate the initiative for this year's edition. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's cut across to a short AV which highlights the important milestones in the last 7 years of Digital India journey.
I dream of a digital India where quality education reaches the most inaccessible corners driven by digital learning. I dream of a digital India where quality healthcare collaborates right up to the remotest region powered by e-healthcare. I dream of a digital India where farmers are empowered with real-time information to the connected with the global markets.
7 years ago, Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the Digital India program to transform India into a digitally empowered knowledge economy with 3 key objectives. Establish a secure and stable digital infrastructure, deliver public services digitally, and ensure that every citizen has access to the internet. Since the launch of the program, India has seen transformational knowledge growth and has demonstrated excellence in adopting innovation and digital technologies across sectors. Today, these cutting-edge technologies are driving India's socio-economic development with a focus on infrastructure, services, and empowerment. In this span of 7 years, BharatNet has become the world's largest rural broadband program, with over 575,000 kilometers of optical fiber laid to connect over 185,000 village panchayats. The confluence of a universal digital identity, banking services, mobile phones, and increasing digital literacy has resulted in the volume of online transactions reaching 340 million per day. DigiLocker, Mobile Seva, Umang. These platforms have simplified access to a wide range of public services through mobile phones. Co-Win, meanwhile, has become the leading platform for COVID-19 vaccinations, with over 1.94 billion vaccine doses administered. With a thriving technology and innovation ecosystem, India has become the world's 3rd largest startup hub with more than 100 unicorns. Now, as India aims to take the value of its digital sector to $1 trillion by 2025, embracing 5G services this year will give a much-needed boost to the Digital India mission. According to the Prime Minister, 5G will not only increase the speed of the internet, it will also increase the speed of economic development and employment generation. And to deliberate on these and many more similar issues, experts from across the spectrum have gathered here for CNBC TV 18 presents Digital India Vision 7.0, powered by Mastercard.
All right, the launch of Digital India has indeed transformed the country into a digitally empowered economy and knowledgeable society. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, may I now invite Shireen Bhan, Managing Editor of CNBC TV 18, onto the stage to set the context for the evening with the welcome address.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and on behalf of CNBC TV 18, I would like to welcome you all back again to the 7th Digital India Summit. It really feels good to be here at a time when we've experienced the infinite power of digital technologies, which have now become an integral part of our lives as well as our businesses. It's been a difficult 2.5 years. The COVID-19 pandemic didn't just change the way that we live, the world that we operate in, the way that we work, but it has perhaps forever changed our relationship with the way that we use technology. Technology adoption was literally on steroids, and it helped provide access to the most basic necessities, from food to education to even the much-needed human connection, as countries and communities went into a very unnatural lockdown. Speak to any CEO or small business owner today and they will tell you tech spend is no longer a luxury but a necessity, and each one of them is mapping out their digital transformation story and journey. Over the past decade, India has seen some transformational digital growth, and it's demonstrated excellence in adopting innovation and digital technology across a whole swath of sectors. Today, these cutting-edge technologies are driving India's socio-economic development with a focus on infrastructure, services and empowerment. We are now pretty much at a near universal 4G coverage. The number of internet users in India has exploded to 830 million, with access to the world's cheapest mobile data. We've got a huge network of nearly 500,000 common service centers across the country, and these provide access to a wide range of online services to the people even in the remotest parts of our country. The coverage of Aadhaar and banking services is also now pretty much ubiquitous and near universal, allowing anyone, anywhere to access online services and directly receive benefits into their own bank accounts. Digital inclusion has been a key goal of the Digital India mission. Through this program, over 51.4 million people have been trained in digital literacy under the Prime Minister's Grameen Digital Saksharta Abhiyan. The unshakable focus on the Digital India transformation has indeed made India a much more desirable destination for investors and a much more fertile breeding ground for new startups. India today has more than 100 unicorns and places India in the 3rd position of countries with the most number of startups. But all of this is perhaps just the tip of the iceberg, because India is poised to be a $1 trillion digital economy, and we can argue or quibble about when we're going to be able to get to that position, but the trajectory looks like we are on a robust map to get there. On the other hand, the acceleration of the possibility of the manufacturing of semiconductors here in India, the launch of 5G services, which we expect should roll out by October, and the further widening of the optical fiber network will only speed up the milestones to be achieved by Digital India. As India scales up this program with new digital initiatives like the Digital India Bhashini and Digital India Genesis, specific focus needs to be given to modern digital laws with an emphasis on digital privacy, cybersecurity, capacity building and skilling to define this decade as India's Techade. That was the promise and the aspiration that the Prime Minister held out when he made his Independence Day address at the Red Fort. I want to leave you, ladies and gentlemen, with a thought that was presented in a conversation that I just had with the global CEO of Mastercard, and thank you very much to the folks at Mastercard for joining and partnering with us to make Digital India 7.0 a reality. Michael Maybach, the global CEO of Mastercard, said that he's very, very confident about the India digital story. In fact, he believes that India could emerge as one of the leaders when it talks about digital economies in the world. So that is the aspiration. The building blocks have been put in place. The question now is how can we further build on the momentum that we've managed to gain. So thank you very much to all of you, to all of our panelists, to all of our partners and our guests for joining us here this evening. We hope that you're going to have stimulating conversations and share your insights and thoughts on what's what the road ahead can look like. Enjoy the evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you once again for joining us here today.
Well, thank you, Shireen, for those wonderful words from you. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, despite being a vastly diversified and populated country, a huge portion of India still remains underbanked, undeserved, and subject to a constantly changing regulatory environment. And for these very reasons, the nation's financial landscape and unsolved challenges are no easy hurdles to overcome. This is where fintech enters the equation, with its ability and power to fundamentally alter and transform India's financial and banking services sector. Ladies and gentlemen, the next introductory note on role of fintech in India's Techade aims to capture the huge growth potential and opportunities poised for the sector and throws light on why India is at the forefront of a fintech revolution. And for that, may I please invite on stage Mr. Nikhil Sahani, Division President, South Asia at Mastercard, for the introductory session.
Good evening, everyone. Dignitaries, Shireen, Koshi, Jayesh, many others in this room. Fintechs, hopefully many of them in this room. Good evening and welcome to this session. Well, if you look at India, and there have been a lot of conversations, the AV also showed some sense. So we're celebrating 75 years of independence. So if you, kind of roll back, 1947, we got our political freedom. 1994, somewhere in the scheme of things, we got our economic freedom. And in 2015, when the Honorable Prime Minister launched Digital India, we took the first step of moving towards digital freedom. And that process is still underway, with some rapid strides that we have made over the past many years. In fact, the last 7 years have been fascinating in terms of the amount of work that has happened in taking India digital. So truly, one of the best examples that I quote, sometime in November 21, I was traveling from Delhi to Mumbai and had a senior colleague from the US. And we were traveling in, and those were maybe tough COVID times compared to what it is today. And, the person at the security asked me for my vaccination certificate, and I showed my phone. And my senior colleague had to just look for his wallet, pull out a card and say that this is, and I said, you have physical vaccination certificates, whereas we have all digital vaccination certificates. And he was like astounded. And I said that the more you proceed into India, you'll figure out that we are becoming digitally free. So I thought that was like a testimony. And now the government has enabled 2 billion vaccinations. These numbers are fairly astounding. Actually, the number of zeros that come with any number associated with India these days is rather, encouraging, if I may say so. So, of course, with Digital India, the launches that have recently happened, Digital India Bhashini, Shireen was referring to it. The Global Innovation in 2021 Index says that, for the 11th year in a row, India is India is the best in terms of the Innovation Index, which speaks volumes about the work that we as a country have achieved. And fintechs have been at the core of it, that the Innovation Index continues to, and there have been platforms that the government has created. The UPI platform, numbers of UPI are astounding as far as we are concerned, and that has given the impetus for a lot of fintechs to come and innovate so that, superior UX can be extended to customers and it becomes seamless. The platforms are indeed seamless, and it's so much more easier. In the next 25 years, so if we were to say that we move into the Amrit Kal as far as India is concerned after having completed 75 years of independence, and the next 25 years that we are going to witness, and 3 foundational technologies which will be the real talking points. One is, of course, big data and analytics. The second is, of course, cloud computing. And the third is possibly the most important, which is cybersecurity. And I'll come to some of these. Of course, we've talked about 5G and how it is going to possibly enable and further digital acceptance and digital freedom as India progresses. Koshi is here. ONDC, which is democratizing digital commerce. truly a global first which is being made in India. And again, there will be a whole lot of innovation which will come around some of these initiatives that the government of India is taking, and fintechs will be at the core of it, as most of us are aware. 6,000 odd fintechs in India, having raised about $30 billion over the last many years. It's not only about the money that's been raised. The money raised is not about the wealth that gets created. It's about the innovation that comes with the wealth, the amount of jobs that are being created, the entrepreneurial spirit of the country, which is today being noticed by all and sundry across the globe. And the BFSI sector today has made rapid strides. Of course, it started with the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana in terms of getting inclusion. So we're moving from inclusion to inclusive growth. You know, with 2014, we started with the Jan Dhan Yojana. Today, we potentially expect another 100 million people to come into the banking net over the next, 4 odd years. Many of you would have read Brett King's book, Bank 4.0, which is about banking everywhere and never at a bank, which has actually become true today. And the digital banking initiatives that have been spearheaded by the government, the RBI, as well as, by the Niti Aayog, are forward-looking to look at some sort of a bank which will be completely digital in nature. That's never happened in India. It's still something that we expect should and possibly will happen over the next, few years. Well, leveraging technology and bolstering cybersecurity is something that we truly believe is the next big thing. So I'll maybe just talk about an incident that took place on 6th May of 2021. It was incidentally the day I joined Mastercard. But on 6th May of 2021, there is this company in the US called Colonial Pipeline. They were hacked. They were hacked. They are the only pipeline that delivers fuel from the eastern coast towards New York, right? So New York was completely starved of fuel for about 5-6 days. And for getting the hack out of order, the US or whichever part of government had to pay 75 bitcoins, which was about $4.4 million to get the hack off. The fact of the matter is that most of us think that cybersecurity is something which only impacts consumers. It impacts anybody and everybody as far as, the entire ecosystem is concerned. And cybersecurity is something that we, at least at Mastercard, believe is possibly the most important component of getting, the so-called safety and security and the true digital freedom. Because as long as you have that trust and faith. So, for example, like ONDC, the government has created the account aggregator framework. Now, the account aggregator framework allows you to share your financial data. You go to an app, would you have the amount of trust to say that, okay, my data can be shared onwards? So the safety and security, as long as we keep on investing into the safety and security piece, that is what is going to get our strategies right. If you start to, kind of equate this with cricket, which is generally a favorite topic for a lot of Indians always, and as well as, I'm personally a very big fan of cricket. So you need to read the pitch right if you're in a match. And reading the pitch right means that you need to know what is it that the ecosystem throws up when cybersecurity comes in. The RBI has come up with a very, very, I think, possibly one of the best innovations that was allowed, which was the Tokenization Mandate that has recently been announced. 200 million tokens, which effectively means that your credentials will never be known to anybody. Like today, if you go to an e-commerce site, you can see your card number there. You will not be required to, keep the card number at any specific merchant or any specific e-commerce merchant as we move forward. That is one initiative to ensure that the safety and security and data protection for consumers is kind of taken care of. Believe it or not, every 11 seconds, a business gets impacted by a cyber attack. So if a business is getting impacted every 11 seconds, a consumer or a set or a number of consumers, which as per last count was 22 globally, get impacted by a cyber attack every second. So, while we are developing platforms such as ONDC, I think the cyber piece is something that we'd have to really think through. And that's something which will allow us to, kind of ensure that people feel very, very secure when they are in this digital space. Finally, one of the other things that I'd want to say is that from a cybersecurity perspective, it's something which is hitting businesses on a very regular basis. There is a fair amount of work that is happening across the globe, whether it is the National malware repository that is being created by the government of India. In fact, the government in India is also going to announce a cybersecurity strategy for the next 5 years. Last one was, that's the other problem that we are faced with or grappled with as a country, that fundamentally, technology is so fast-paced that regulation finds it very tough to keep up with it. And once regulation comes in, most of the ecosystem starts to say that this is not in line with what we wanted. Now, that is the rapid pace of technology, which makes the regulator's job a whole lot more difficult as compared to what it is. So to the fintechs at large, of course, there has been great work that has happened on the digital side, on the digital lending front, on the cyber side, but fundamentally to take ourselves to the next phase of Digital India, I think it will be important that we continue to innovate. 3 areas which will be potentially most important, coming back to data analytics that will support credit decisioning. Platforms such as ONDC will actually democratize credit. And MSMEs today in India have a $400 billion credit gap. You cover up for 25% of it, you add 2 percentage points to nominal GDP. So that will be the first and foremost point which will possibly be required for us to take it to the next level. Second, we will need to keep on innovating on consumer UX. Today, of course, whenever you are doing a transaction, at least on a card, you've got to enter your CVV number, then an OTP. Today there is technology that will be available wherein your entire checkout process will be completely seamless. Something that I was talking from the tokenization perspective, which enables in transactions as well as safety and security. And the third point is that some other sectors in India which have traditionally not been as well digitized and continue to be credit-starved, like agri, will benefit a lot. So if fintechs can focus on capturing the entire value supply chain, there is a fair amount of value that can be unleashed. And of course, as I said, platforms such as ONDC, which will today provide scale to everyone who's on the platform, thereby pushing all fintechs to innovate in different parts of the entire channel that will lead to a transaction, is something that we'd see. So, towards the end, I'd like to quote our late President, Shri APJ Abdul Kalam, who once said that a dream is not what you see while sleeping, it is something that keeps you awake all throughout. So, the last 7 years have been nothing short of a dream to achieve India's digital freedom, and we are very hopeful that some of the ideas which will come over, some of the discussions that are scheduled over the next couple of hours will possibly give us a path to move towards a truly independent digital India, if I may say so. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Nikhil, for that enlightening speech. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, since the launch of the Digital India program, the volume of online transaction has grown over 50 times to over 340 million per day. DigiLocker, UPI, Mobile Seva and Umang platforms have greatly simplified access to a wide range of public services through mobile phones. New age digital platforms in health and education have transformed the delivery of services in these domains. The next panel discussion, titled Public Digital Platforms Enabling Inclusive India Fast and Far, aims to dwell upon how India's unique platformization strategy of building public digital platforms across sectors is playing a key role in government-citizen engagement, and how the overall experience can be further improved with e-governance taking the center stage. Ladies and gentlemen, to take this discussion forward and moderate the upcoming session, may I please invite on stage Ashmit Kumar, Deputy Editor, CNBC TV 18. Hi. Let me also please invite on stage Abhishek Singh, MD, President and CEO, Digital India Corporation, National E-Governance Division and MyGov. I would also like to call upon stage T. Koshi, CEO, ONDC. Joining us live virtually from Hyderabad is J. Satyanarayan, Chief Advisor, Center for 4th Industrial Revolution, India Center, World Economic Forum, and Dr. Anand Deshpande, Founder, Chairman and Managing Director of Persistent Systems, and is a part-time member of UIDA. On to you, Ashmit.
Thank you so much for that introduction. A very good evening to all of our panelists, those joining virtually as well with us physically, as well as to all of our guests this evening. In preparation for this summit, I was just having a conversation with a senior journalist. He said, in his words, I would imagine that Digital India has arrived when I order a bottle of wine online and then sell the empty bottle online once again. So I think, but for the wine, we're almost there. But on a serious note, to begin this conversation, as the title reads, Digital India Vision 7.0, Mr. Singh, this question is for you. When we talk about Digital India, 7 years from when it began, India is currently home to the three largest digital open public platforms. So that's CoWIN, UPI, as well as Aadhaar. Are we there? Has Digital India Vision arrived, or is this just the beginning? Mr. Singh.
I would go back to the day the Digital India was launched by Honorable Prime Minister on 1st of July 2015. And if you remember the way it was launched, the logo of Digital India, the tagline of Digital India says power to empower. So what Digital India has done in the last 7 years is that it has empowered people across the country. It has given them identity platform with almost 1.34 billion Aadhaar numbers. UPI, we all know, more than 10 lakh crore worth of UPI transactions are happening every month. And then we even have small value transactions happening, which doesn't happen anywhere in the world. And CoWIN, of course, you mentioned as a third digital platform, but I would say that there are many more. CoWIN vaccination, we all know more than 200 crore doses have been given. But if you look at another of our offerings, the DigiLocker, for example, it has got like today 12 crore users, and we are adding almost 200,000 users per day. It has got 560 crore, 5.6 billion documents there, and it is facilitating seamless exchange of data, information, verification of documents without requiring to submit any PDF documents also. So like when you apply for a passport today, you can just authorize your DigiLocker to verify your documents, credentials, your date of birth, your address. You don't need to submit a PDF document also online. This is a game changer. It's being used for verifying academic credentials, health records. It's becoming part of the health locker and part of the National Health Authority. Then the eSanjeevani platform, the Diksha platform. So all these platforms are what they are doing is that they are offering various kinds of services, education services, healthcare services to people. The ONDC which is coming up, it will disrupt the e-commerce market all over. So what is doing, all these investments, all these projects and the digital public goods that we are building is empowering people in every way. But I would refrain from saying that yes, we have arrived and there's nowhere else to go. We have a lot many projects to implement, many people to reach. Digital inclusion is a very important subject that we are trying to address. We have a network of 500,000 common service centers, but to ensure that every Indian who does not even have a smartphone or who does not even know how to operate an app, how does he access services? So for that, on the Umang app, we have built in voice-enabled services. So the day when we will be able to access all public services through a feature phone, through a toll-free number, or speaking to an app, just like we speak to a Siri or Alexa, and be able to track our passports, our driving license, or ration cards, and then talking to the apps in the language of our choice. That day when we will be able to do that, then only we should say we have arrived. So there's a lot more things to do as we build on these projects.
I remember, Mr. Singh, last year, I think in the month of September, if I remember correctly, you'd given yourself a target that in 2 years' time, all citizen-facing interfaces will go digital. I'll come back to you on that issue in just a bit. But let's also get Mr. Satya Narayana in on this conversation. He's joining us virtually. Mr. Satya Narayana, if you can hear me, the question I want to ask you is that just along the lines of what Mr. Singh had suggested, there is significant economic potential to be unlocked. In fact, a recent study by NASSCOM suggested that the figure that we're looking at in terms of economic potential to be unlocked is north of $700 billion. So that's, those are the kind of numbers we're talking, very large numbers. Your sense in terms of the role that these open digital platforms will be playing going forward up until 2030 to unlock that economic potential?
Thank you. Good evening to all the co-panelists and participants. Really, it's my pleasure to participate in this event virtually though. Let me step back a little bit to answer this question as to how to achieve that lofty figure in billions, which is potential at this point of time, but can it be made real? When we are talking of public digital platforms, actually we need to differentiate three things which are being talked about. One is digital public goods, second is public digital platform, which is the theme of the session, and third one is digital ecosystem. Each one is increasingly bigger in scope and scale of operations and complexity. Digital public goods is about being open standards, open source, open data, open APIs, open AI models, and so on. Public digital platform is about delivery of public services. Abhishek has just mentioned the top of the chart items just now. And the third is the highest in the ecosystem is the digital ecosystem, and the focus is on obviously on ecosystem where the public, private, NGO, civil society, everybody is coming together to make a difference to the, stakeholders. Where the key word there is interoperability. So we have examples in the making in the health sector like National Digital Health Ecosystem, NDA in the education ecosystem, and IDEA, which is upcoming, which is in the agriculture sector. So to address the question, of how to exploit the potential, we need to look at all the three. It's not that, either or. We need all the three formats of, digital transformation. Now, having said that, let me also mention, what is required. What are the requisites of a public digital platform? What are the characteristics it should satisfy? I would list three as mandatory for all these platforms to comply with. One is it should substantially enhance the UX of the customer, as just mentioned before me. That is the efficiency, transparency, and convenience of the citizens and businesses which interact with the system. That is the bottom line. The second is empowering the end users so that they are in control and they have a choice, in what kind of a option they are going to take. It's not something that either take it or leave it. There is a choice to the citizen. And third and most important is the protection of the individual rights like privacy and security. So these are the minimum mandatory requirements that any public digital platform should satisfy. I'm sure that in terms of the billions of transactions that we are going through in the three top platforms, so obviously these mandatory requirements have been long met. Now, what is desirable set of requirements going forward, which also are available to a large extent in these platforms? One is, I would say, open, and open, meaning open standards, open source, and open APIs. Second one is establishing level playing field for all the players so that the big and the small players, the technology players, have a equal opportunity of participating in the ecosystem. Third one is enabling interoperability. They say that data is new oil, data has got $500 billion of potential in India alone, etc. But for it to be realized, we need the interoperability through standards and protocols. Then at the end of the day, we have to operate at the population scale. It's not that you do a pilot in one district or something, and it should operate pan-India. So that's one of the characteristics of a public digital platform. Then what are the kind of enablers if we have to achieve the big targets that we have in mind? So I would say that we need 4 Ps. It's a 4P formula. We need a set of policies in the first instance for data management, data governance, data security, data privacy, and procurement of various platforms or services. The second P is about the platform itself, the public digital platforms. In all the sectors, we need to have such public digital platforms, especially the priority sectors of the country. And the third P is about protocols and standards and specifications and open data formats so that interoperability is assured in the run. And last but not least is the partnerships that are required between public and private. The government should be more of an enabler rather than trying to build all the platforms themselves.
Those are some very interesting insights.
So for
Mr.
that, we
Satyanarayana.
need the
You've given us the 4 Ps,
place,
perhaps
yeah.
something that the government can bear in mind. But Mr. Koshi is also with us. Mr. Koshi, if I can get you in on this conversation, we're talking about concepts of openness, of interoperability, as Mr. Satyanarayana suggested. You're, of course, leading the charge for one such vertical, ONDC, taking forward. What are the major challenges going forward? We're talking about the likes of Microsoft, Snapdeal that have already come on board. But what are the challenges that you're facing in terms of the role that you see the private sector entities playing? And this, I'm speaking in reference to the heavyweights that we're speaking of in the retail e-commerce space. How much of a challenge is that in terms of having a happy marriage, so to speak, between an open platform like ONDC and some of the closed-door facilities and systems like we have the e-commerce giants?
Thank you. Now, first of all, when we say open network, what it is attempting is to democratize. What does it mean? It means that everybody has the equal opportunity to present what they want to offer. Nobody can claim superior power because of the captive set of users in any side of it. So the scale ceases to be the lever, but innovation and specialization become the lever. So whether you are small or big, you have equal opportunity to be discovered. And if you have something really good to offer, then you get discovered more. Not because you have somebody who is always captive. So in that context, when ONDC enable large number of unbundled, specialized building blocks of commerce. Let's say, when a buyer application comes, he says, my loyalty is only to my buyer to help him make the best buy. Let me go and buy whatever that is best for him. I don't have anybody seller I want to push. When the seller application comes, he says that, let me try to offer something really good so that people want to discover me.
Sure.
So there's no conflict of interest that is coming. So in that context, it becomes inevitable for everybody to join. When every buyers come together in the open network, the market become $1 billion plus. It's nobody's father's property. So now if somebody decides that I have a small group of 50 million people, he becomes irrelevant. So it becomes natural compulsion for current large players to come. When you say large, do they have a predominant market in India? No. We understand that the total market penetration of digital commerce is only 7%, and on the seller side less than 1%. So when it has to reach 50 to 60%, everybody has to grow, and then today's biggies become irrelevant if they don't cope up.
So if I've understood you correctly, what you're saying is that it's inevitable for even these larger companies to in fact come on board and be a part of the system. Is that correct?
Yes, it is inevitable, because when the 7% penetration become 50% even, you need a lot more to come. You saw the same thing happening in UPI. And so it is not taking away anybody's market. It is collectively attacking a larger market, as envisioned by the government and the Honorable Prime Minister, that all of us going to be digitally enabled. It doesn't matter big or small.
Great. Let's also get Mr. Deshpande in on this conversation. He's joining us virtually. Mr. Deshpande, very good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. You, of course, are a part-time member with the UIDAI. The journey of Aadhaar has been quite interesting, to say the least. What we've seen over the last few years in terms of the initiative taken by the government, there were on some occasion challenges from the civil society. The matter also landed before the court on the ideal use cases of Aadhaar. Just your quick thoughts. Aadhaar, where it stands today, 99% of the adult population having been covered, and now with Aadhaar also being contemplated above and beyond government benefits to also considering vetting of electoral rolls. Your quick thoughts on how far the journey has come and what the criticisms have been, especially on some of the more recent use cases.
Sorry, I can't hear anything at all.
Hi, Mr. Deshpande. Am I audible to you? Can you hear me now?
Sorry, I think we are having technical difficulty, but I'm not able to follow any of the conversation at all. The audio line is not clear.
I'll just take a minute. I think I'll request my production team to in fact touch base with you once again and to get more clarity there. Hopefully we'll have him in just a couple of minutes on a better line. But Mr. Singh, coming to you on one of the issues that I said we'll come back to you on, is that last year you had given yourself a target. Look, in 2 years' time, all citizen-facing interfaces will slowly turn digital. A 2-year target is what you'd given us. We're nearly at the halfway mark. How far have we progressed, and what are the challenges that you're facing in terms of allowing for digitization of these interfaces?
I must say, most high-volume citizen transactions have gone digital.
Sure.
Like if you look into numbers, all digital services across the Government of India and state governments are on the Umang platform. Umang had around 400 services, public services across central government and state governments around a year back. Today we have around 1600 services. So more and more services have added on. There are some states which are a bit slow in putting up, and we are working on bringing those services. But by and large, most services have come on the Umang platform. They have gone digital. What we need to do and what we need to work on is to make sure that the services are end-to-end digital. It's that one should be able to access service digitally and get the final outcome also digitally. And when we are getting the final outcome digitally, it should go into the DigiLocker so that it's easily accessible. Well, it should not happen that you just make an application and then it requires a online to offline kind of interface when you have to go physically somewhere. So for getting the services. So most services have gone digital to that extent. The real challenge that we are working on now is that how do we make it available in all Indian languages? Sure. For that, the Bhashini project is working on providing open APIs for ensuring that language interface is built in, because India has got 22 official languages, and till we make every service available in the language of a person's choice, it will not be truly digital. And the secondly, voice enablement of services, about which I just spoke about.
Interesting. But even as we're discussing these digital services, it's important to keep in mind that the Aadhaar serves as the backbone as far as Digital India is concerned. And Mr. Deshpande, I understand, I'm being told, is back with us, and hopefully he can hear me this time. Mr. Deshpande, a quick question to you, that as far as Aadhaar is concerned, it has been the backbone. It continues to be the backbone as far as Digital India services. My question to you is that the journey of Aadhaar has not been an easy one. It's been a tumultuous one. We've seen initiatives by the government, we've seen criticisms from civil society, and even as recently as just a few days back, there were criticisms that came forth with respect to the use of Aadhaar for vetting of electoral rolls. So just your quick thoughts on this journey that Aadhaar has had to undertake, and what these criticisms have been, and your response to those criticisms in terms of use cases for Aadhaar. Mr. Deshpande.
So predominantly Aadhaar has been used as a place for keeping digital identity of individuals. And as far as the Aadhaar records are concerned, we provide yes, no or eKYC type feedback to various applications that want to use it. Now, this is a very powerful mechanism where you now know who the individual is, and you can track that individual. Basically, you can get that individual's identity for any application that you need. So a lot of how it gets used depends on the application, and there are several checks and balances that are there in the Aadhaar system to ensure that individual's identity can be protected. So I think there are ways to make Aadhaar very effective and useful for people to use while maintaining individuals' privacy.
But again, Mr. Deshpande, if I can get you back on that question, that while there are, government does say that there are inbuilt protections and safeguards in place, the question that has been put across as far as the use of Aadhaar is concerned, that should we just limit it to extension of government benefits? Or would it also be fair to take it a step forward for vetting of electoral rolls and other such use cases? That's the distinction that some of the critics are sought to make. Your quick thoughts on that?
See, the Aadhaar system on a technical basis allows you to do deduplication of records. That is the main advantage that Aadhaar can provide. So I think it's for the government or anyone else who wants to use it specifically for deduplication. Aadhaar tends to be very useful. Now, most of the data that is being collected in other sources does not necessarily have any, it just has a pointer from Aadhaar that allows it for deduplication. Aadhaar itself has no evidence or information about the electrical records or any other records that are being kept outside. So as a technical place where you can use this infrastructure for deduplication, Aadhaar is very useful. And to that extent, if it can be used in other places where deduplication is very important, then the Aadhaar system is well set for doing those kinds of things. But in itself, Aadhaar is not deciding where it should get used. All we do is to provide information about whether this person exists as identified by the Aadhaar system.
Mr. Singh, let me also get your thoughts on the same question here. I'm drawing your attention to the 2017 verdict of the Supreme Court, where it held that, in fact, the use of Aadhaar will be limited for public benefits, government schemes, but also at the same time, simultaneously, it declared privacy to be a fundamental right. So even as we are diving headfirst into Digital India vision, the questions that many ask is that, are we exposing citizens to some inherent risks, given as how we don't have a data protection framework in place? We were nearing one, but there were some apprehensions that the government felt on the startup front. And for that and for other reasons, it's been taken back to the drawing board. Your quick thoughts on the urgency that one needs to show in terms of having a data protection framework?
See, first and foremost, as far as Aadhaar is concerned, the usage of Aadhaar is clearly defined by the Aadhaar Act and the Supreme Court judgment therein, which says that it can be used for government benefits, number one. And number two, voluntary use of Aadhaar is permitted, wherein the consent of citizen is taken for whether he wants to give his Aadhaar for any public service or not. So that debate is very clear. When it comes to with regard to the risks that are associated with Aadhaar, I would say, in spite of lot of doubts being raised and speculation being raised by vested interests, so far in the last 11 to 12 years of Aadhaar's existence, we began in 2009 and the first Aadhaars were rolled out in 2010. In the last 12 years of Aadhaar's existence, there has not been a single breach of Aadhaar database, and there has not been a single instance wherein anybody has lost anything because of any flaw in the Aadhaar architecture or Aadhaar database or other systems. In the same time, there have been many other systems built by the best of the IT companies in the world. There have been breaches, there have been data loss, there has been data theft, there have been identity theft, all kinds of things happen with the best of the banks, the best of the public platforms. So Aadhaar is fully secure. Aadhaar has offered lots of services, just direct benefit transfers. More than 25 billion rupees of direct benefit, 25 trillion rupees of benefits have been transferred through direct benefit transfers. In the pandemic, we were able to do this easily. I was in a panel with CIOs, global CIOs, and I was told that the United States, the so-called developed country, is struggling to track the pandemic checks that they issued to as pandemic relief. They gave $400 billion of pandemic relief through paper checks and plastic checks. And they're not able to track where it went. So Aadhaar is fully secure. It has resulted in a lot of benefits, fully voluntary. With regard to the need for a data protection bill, yes, we do need a data protection bill, but having a data protection bill is not the solution of all the public service delivery issues which are there. It ensures that everybody who is dealing with your data is made accountable, and you have a right to know who is using your data for what purpose. To that extent, a data protection bill is needed, but not having that has not prevented us from using Aadhaar for empowering people, for delivering services, and for especially during the pandemic.
Mr. Satya, coming to you, same question that we're talking about digital rights here as well as Digital India. Quick question in terms of data protection provisions and the lack of a framework. Would you say that the current safeguards are sufficient in terms of securing the rights of individuals, or is there perhaps the need felt for a very solid data protection framework that will guarantee these digital rights? Mr. Satyanarayana.
Can you, please, Ashwin, can you come again? The audio is not that clear.
Hi, Mr. Satyanarayana. If I can, I'll just repeat the question on the need for a data protection framework that we have been dwelling over and deliberating upon for the last 5 years, have not made much headway, but your quick thoughts on how urgently it's required going forward.
Yeah, I think data protection bill really is need of the hour. There is no doubt about it. And after a lot of deliberations, it has been brought about, and the JPC also has made a number of suggestions. As Abhishek has mentioned, I think a fresh attempt will be made to bring it before the Parliament at the earliest. Because that in the absence of a bill which is overarching in nature and with a regulator in place, in the absence of that, there is a lot of hesitation in terms of using data in the right manner, even though it is for a beneficial purpose. There is a lot of hesitation in sharing of data. So once the bill and the various regulations under that are in place and the machinery is in place, the mobility and the dynamism of the data will increase manifold, and that will be going a long way in realizing the potential of the digital India.
Sure. Mr. Koshi, let me come to you. That's of course one challenge that we're going forward in terms of securing digital rights, but like as Mr. Singh said, that's not kept the whole Digital India mission from moving forward. Being a part of that Digital India mission, you've given yourself a target of hitting 100 cities, growing organically. How far ahead have we come in that roadmap, and how much more time will it take for us to hit that target of 100 cities in terms of ONDC, and what are the challenges that you're facing doing so?
Let me put the context right for you. See, the way ONDC is set up, it's a network.
Sure.
Network means there has to be multiple entities coming together to transact among themselves. There's no central platform. In a normal conventional launch of a bank or a stock exchange or anything, there could be a central platform which is 80% is in your control.
Sure.
Whereas when you're creating network, you're giving them a language and a grammar and tell everybody to talk. So then it would mean that the one way to test it is to get organically grow more and more people talk. And the scope of ONDC is very, very broad. It could cover commerce, it could cover services, it could cover, even in commerce, there could be on grocery on one side and fashion on the other side. All those things has to happen. So it has to build up. So to make sure that it happens organically, we took up the most challenging part of it. The last mile, which is very challenging, is grocery and food. And we said, let's do it in a very small and steady fashion. Let's first look at 5 cities across the different parts of the country and bring some sellers, some buying platforms, logistics together to transact in a controlled environment. And since it is to have participation very many people, we said now after having started in 5, let us try to keep on adding those numbers. Because when it comes to grocery, it has to be hyper-local. You can't buy atta from Delhi to Bangalore. Atta in Delhi has to be delivered by a merchant in Delhi. So similarly, we said, let us try to, that is why we put ourselves a target of going broader to have catalysts in every town. Then in some other places, we're already again, we are going deeper.
Sure.
So it is not about this some number, because eventually, in grocery, you need to be hyper-local. Let's say in fashion, I can be in Delhi and still supply in Bombay. So it will be, so that way the city presence become relevant. What we are showing that we will demonstrate across some buyers and sellers, and we are getting fantastic participation from big and small in becoming actively integrating their system. For example, if I just give you 2 examples. One, let's say one of our major participants is CSC. When CSC goes live, which is going to happen soon, initially they may make themselves open a little bit, but the moment they feel comfortable, they're present in 5 lakh villages. Suddenly the 5 lakh villages are a part of the ONDC. On both on the seller side and the buyer side. On the buyer side, even in villages, if there are no people do not have the mobile phone, they can give assisted sell, assisted buy. And for the artisans in those villages, they can make it deliver. So that's how the ONDC as a network will explode and grow. So by simply looking at are you in 50, are you in 100, it is not relevant. But we are very much progressing in that way.
But would you like to give us a figure as to by when we can expect that 100 target to be achieved?
I think by coming month it definitely happen. We are already more than 55. I said the moment one of them becomes just like, it will become certainly not 100, it will become 1,000. For example, if you would have seen people already making announcements, some of the large platforms made announcements, I don't want to take anybody's thunder away, and they're going to lie probably in a week, 10 days time. So that certainly instead of 100, it may become 1,000. So that's no worry at all.
Right, Mr. Koshi, unfortunately that's all the time that we have for as a part of this panel. It's been a very interesting discussion talking about these open digital public platforms, and what's interesting is that the messaging from the Ministry of Electronics and IT is quite clear. In fact, taking this a step forward, growing from strength to strength, what they're suggesting is that we will develop a framework, the government will develop a framework to take some of these digital solutions that are made in India and to take them global. The idea being that Industry 4.0, India is hoping to lead that charge, and some of these open digital platforms, one expects, will play a big factor in that role that India is trying to take forward. So on that note, I'd like to thank all of our panelists who've taken out their precious time and shared their insights and perspectives with us. It's been a very informative session for us. There's much to learn, and this is an exciting space. There's a lot of action. We hope that we continue to reach out to you and you continue to indulge us with such interactions that will help us benefit from your insight and your perspective. Thank you once again for joining us. A very good evening to all of our panelists once again. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, gentlemen, for that power-packed session. Wasn't it a power-packed session? For me, it was very informative. Well, moving on, as digital capabilities improve and connectivity becomes omnipresent, technology is poised to quickly and radically change nearly every sector of India's economy. Ladies and gentlemen, the state of Telangana is one of the prime examples of adapting to the Digital India vision with the intention to make each and every person digitally empowered. Telangana is one of India's most advanced states in digital governance, using the technology for good governance in industry and commerce, as also for good governance in social welfare and development. The initiatives of the Telangana government have found recognition in the Good Governance Index 2021 too. The state has set a target to be the front runner when it comes to innovation technology. To further throw light on various such facets, may I now invite on stage Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, Principal Secretary of Industries and Commerce and Information Technology, Telangana government, for a special address on how Telangana envisions to be a global leader in emerging technologies and how it does in impacting the progression of digital India. So may we please have the honor to have you on stage and have the special address from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, let me thank Cnbc, TV18 and Mastercard for putting together this event and for inviting state representatives to participate. Typically, when such events are held in Delhi, they become extremely Delhi-centric. You speak about national programs, you speak about national frameworks, which is fine. But we all know that the real action happens in the states, and to invite a state representative to present their perspectives is also very, very important. And I'm glad that amongst all the 28 states in our country, you are giving this opportunity to Telangana. I have been the IT Secretary in Telangana for more than 7.5 years. So in a way, I have seen it all, done it all. But what I'd like to really speak about is something we have been actually doing in Telangana. So I'll speak about live examples, live experiences. Little before Digital India was launched in July 2015, actually 2 months prior to that, we launched our own program of Digital Telangana. Because Telangana, as all of you would know, is a new state. It got created in June 2014. And one of the mandates which was given to us after becoming a new state is to relook at all the existing policies, all the legacies, and come out with new frameworks, etc. So we created this template of Digital Telangana in March 2015. And when we learnt about Digital India, I myself was present when Honorable Prime Minister launched it at one of the stadiums here in Delhi. I did recognize that there's lots of very strong alignment between what we have already announced and what the Digital India's goals are. But we also noticed that in certain aspects, we are much more ambitious and much more audacious than Digital India is. So let me share the 7.5 years of Digital Telangana's experience. If you have to summarize to a layman what Digital Telangana is,
I would use a very simple kind of a format. Digital Telangana stands on two pillars. There's a pillar of supply, and then there is a pillar of demand. So let me speak about supply. So supply, very obviously, is about creating digital infrastructure. If you want to digitalize, if you want to penetrate every aspect of human life through digital, obviously you need to have humongous amounts of digital robust infrastructure, which really is available to the last person in the remotest of the villages. So in Telangana, we have tried to achieve this in a multiple number of ways. The most ambitious of it is what is called T-Fiber. We just saw in the AV about BharatNet, whose aim is to connect every panchayat headquarter. But in Telangana, our ambition is to provide digital connectivity through optical fiber cable to each and every household. And there are close to 7.5 million households in Telangana. And obviously, as one would imagine, many of them are remote, they're in hilly areas, they're inside forests, etc. But regardless of where you are, we are confident that we'll be able to provide optic fiber cable to everyone, every home in the state. And the confidence stems from the fact that we have already implemented very successfully a flagship program of the state government in which piped drinking water is provided to every home. In fact, Telangana is the first state which has achieved this distinction. And in doing so, we actually dug close to 150,000 kilometers of trenches. And we have very creatively used the same trenches to lay the optic fiber cable ducts as well. So lots of costs have been saved, and we have been able to therefore reach each and every household in the state. And we are in August now, towards the end of August. I'm very confident that by, let us say, February or March of the next year, every home in Telangana will have optic fiber connectivity. The second way in which we are providing digital infrastructure is, of course, through 4G. And now, of course, we are moving into 5G. So 4G also, as there could be representatives from private telcos as well. Many of them have told us that because of the way, as it is, Telangana is highly rated on the ease of doing business. So for the rollout of 4G network as well, we have simplified all approvals, permissions, everything is self-certified, deemed approval. And some of the largest telcos in the country have actually shared this with us, that near 100% coverage, if they can claim, has been achieved in any state. It is in the state of Telangana. And we are very confident when the 5G rollout happens. They are planning to roll it out initially in 11 cities in the country. Hyderabad is one of them. And I'm very, very confident that the experience of 5G players will be no different from what it has been when they have been rolling out the 4G cables, etc. The third way in which we are providing digital infrastructure is through public Wi-Fi. We have a very ambitious program in Hyderabad, which is called Hi-Fi. We have identified 3,000 hotspots where people congregate. These are typically, let us say, the railway station, shopping malls, bus stations, tourist places, and so on. And in every such location, we have been able to provide public Wi-Fi services. Part of it is free, and then after a while, you need to pay for it. But more than each of these, we also have come to a very important realization. It's like this phrase that you can take a horse to water, but can you make it drink? It requires much more than just creating a water pond. So let me share this with you. Let us say someone is living in a village in rural Telangana, and he goes to sleep today, and tomorrow morning when you tell him that, hey, there is broadband at your home, at your doorstep, many of them, a large number of them, hundreds and thousands of them, are not going to jump up in joy and rush out and start buying a tab or a smartphone or anything. For hundreds of them, this will just not have any impact at all, because they're not really aware about the potential of digital. They're also not some of them possibly may not be able to prioritize this expenditure over other household expenditures, and so on and so forth. So what we feel is, as was also mentioned by Mr. Singh in the earlier panel, that there is also an assisted way of providing digital services, digital infrastructure. So in every panchayat of ours, we are creating what are called Digital Telangana Kiosks, DTCs, Digital Telangana Cells. And again, I feel very proud to share this with you. We have close to 1,500 of them up and running, and each of them are operated by a woman entrepreneur. So a woman from the community. We have invested a lot of resources, time and energy to build their capacities, and they run these kiosks. and they provide all kinds of services to people who are currently not in a position to invest in buying their own devices, etc. So this way, in these 4 ways, our ambition is to ensure that every person, every household, regardless of where they are, they have reliable, good quality digital connectivity. So this is the supply side of Digital Telangana. But we also have a demand side. As I mentioned, you can take a horse to water, but you have to do much more than just creating a water body for the horse. So what we have also recognized is that for the most common citizen in the state or in the country for that matter, real sense of owning up digital processes, digital programs, etc. will be when he starts seeing benefits out of it. If you are able to target the most pressing challenges, the most serious pain points that he faces, and you are able to provide a digital solution which works right before his eyes, then only will you get some buy-in or some support for these kind of digital initiatives. So this is where our focus has been. So for creating demand, of course, the digital literacy program, which is a part of Digital India, is very important, and we are also implementing it very, very sincerely. I can share a little bit about that as well. So many of you may not be aware, and when I say this to you, you may also find it very ludicrous. As you would know, in our country, we still do not have 100% functional literacy. And adult literacy programs are going on for decades altogether. But the goalpost there is very simple. If you are able to write your name, you will be certified as a literate person. So for example, my name is Jayesh. I speak in Hindi. So if I write Ja, Ya and Sha, 3 alphabets in Hindi, I will be called a literate person. But we all know that this is quite farcical. There are maybe 30, 40 more alphabets in Hindi, and unless you know all the alphabets, obviously you cannot write or read properly. So in as a part of our digital literacy program in Telangana, we have ensured that there is a very rigorous goalpost. Not only should you be able to understand the basic hardware, like how do you open your device or how do you open the hardware, but the criteria that we follow is that you should be able to create a mail ID, and you should be able to send a mail, and you should be able to receive a mail. And to make the system even more kind of accountable, we have engaged the Indian School of Business. Many of you would know that ISB is located in Hyderabad. They do an audit of this program. So once our field staff claim that this village has become digitally literate, the ISB team goes there to verify if that claim is true or not. And this verification happens periodically. So I go once, let us say after 2 months, and then I certify whether you are literate or not. And then I go again after maybe 9 months or so to check whether the consistency in that digital literacy is there or not. So we take that quite seriously. But as I was alluding to, the most important way of getting the buy-in of people for digital programs is actually to solve their pain points using digital interventions. And I'll again give an example. So in rural India today, including in Telangana, agriculture is one sector which supports the largest number of livelihoods. So we have chosen agriculture, apart from other sectors as well, in which we are having a full blast of digital programs. So we have understood the entire chain of activities in agriculture, right from the time a farmer has to purchase seeds, to preparing his fields, to sowing, to harvesting, managing the pest, storage, taking it to market. If there's a crop failure, then insurance. Across all steps of his activities, we have been able to provide digital solutions through which his production improves, his productivity improves, his income goes up, his losses go down. And we have tried to make these solutions extremely affordable and also easy to implement, because obviously a very simple small farmer in a rural location obviously doesn't have too much of schooling, perhaps nil at all. And to be able to convince him to use some application or a tool, etc., requires you to simplify it as much as possible. And again, I'm very happy to share that we have tried it out in 3-4 main crops in Telangana with amazing results. So this is our belief, that if you are able to show that digital works in solving your pain points, then you will immediately start getting buy-in from everyone. And I'm also very happy to share that all these solutions that I speak about, I gave the example of agriculture, but we have done similar things for health, education, livelihoods, skilling. Most of the solutions are sourced from the world of startups. Some of you would be aware that just about a month and a half ago, we have started the country's largest, in fact, the world's largest technology incubator that is called T-Hub. And T-Hub today has become the fulcrum around which lots of innovation happens throughout the state. And we are able to identify those startups who are today able to give solutions to us which are actually addressing some of the most pressing challenges that common people face. I know that in the audience today are different kinds of stakeholders. There are private companies, corporates, there are academicians, there are members of the startup community. Whatever we have been successful in doing in Telangana has all been done through a partnership approach. And while we have had a very satisfactory experience all these while, but we also agree, just as Mr. Singh said, that we have a lot of ground to cover. And I would be happy if people in the room join hands with us to deliver more and more digital services, digital solutions, and ensure that the tech prowess of Hyderabad and Telangana that remains a role model for the rest of the country. Thank you very much for having me here. Thank you.
It's not very often that we get Mr. Ranjan here in Delhi, so I thought let's use this opportunity to get a little bit more from him on the state's digital journey that's been covered. I want to understand from you, Mr. Ranjan, you spoke about the fact that Telangana launched its own digital program 2 months before the Digital India program was actually launched. And we've seen this happen not just in the case of the Digital India mission, but across different missions as well. In terms of being able to marry the objectives and the aspirations of the state's program with the central program, what have been the learnings and the lessons from this experience of working together but also working independently?
See, I'll be very honest with you. In some sectors, obviously, the ambition that we have is much broader than what even the national government wants to do. I just gave the example of digital connectivity. Right from day one, that is more than 7 years ago, we were clear in our minds that we'll connect every household. This kind of thinking is coming to national government only now. They have been always speaking about connecting the panchayats, and thereafter maybe you use Wi-Fi or low-range satellites or whatever to connect the households. But we were clear that we'll connect households right from day one. In many other aspects, the central government's programs are also very kind of well thought. They are very kind of comprehensive, and we do emulate them. So Telangana still is a part of, unlike the Nizam who wanted Hyderabad to become a part of Pakistan, Telangana is still a part of our country. We'll be very happy to kind of emulate good programs, etc. And many things. For example, I spoke about the digital literacy program. That's very important to us. We have learned a lot from the way the program has been rolled out. ONDC, which has actually been rolled out in a limited way, we are eagerly looking forward to it because we have started something by ourselves. Mr. Koshi knows that Hyderabad was one of the first cities that he visited, and he was also surprised to see that we have already started something which is called Global Linkers Make in Telangana. But eventually we would integrate it with ONDC so that the whole range of benefit of some of these national programs come our way.
What have been the biggest constraints? And I'm asking you this because you've now got a runway of about 7-8 years, where you've tracked the journey of what you've been able to achieve. What have been the biggest constraints in being able to achieve these milestones and being able to achieve the targets? One would imagine, and that's typically the most obvious constraint that comes to mind, is the financial or the resource constraint. But very often that's not actually the case. So that's what I want to understand from you. What have been the key constraints, and how did you mitigate them to be able to achieve the milestones that you have?
See, when Telangana was a new state, I mean, we were kind of untested. People were not very sure what the state will eventually deliver. And if you look at the examples of new states which were created earlier, there was still a belief that this also will be a middling kind of a state. Nothing progressive will come out of it. But obviously, after a couple of years or so, when they looked at the performance, most importantly, the signal from the leadership was very strong. You have met our Minister for Information Technology, Mr. K.T. Ramarao, on umpteen occasions, and you are aware, you have interviewed him personally.
Yeah.
You know the kind of compelling vision that he brings on the table, the ability to assimilate the best of not just in our country. If there is some global best practice also, he wants to bring it here. The one constraint which I could have answered it as a part of your earlier question as well. And since I've seen that Abhishek Singh has walked out of the room, I feel more free to kind of speak about it. Government of India also has this one-size-fit-all kind of mentality. So he spoke proudly about Umang. He mentioned that 400 services across the country were there. 60, I hope he's not coming back. 16, please keep an eye that side as well. 1,600 services have been added.
They don't actually have to be in the room.
So much before Umang, much before. It looks like a generation before Umang. 2 states in the country. I won't take credit all by myself. I know that Karnataka did it much before us. Karnataka started what is called Karnataka 1. Telangana followed suit. We call it T-App Folio. All our services, 630 of our services are available in T-App Folio. 7 years before they are speaking about Umang. And today, because they have introduced Umang, they are kind of emphasizing that everything should now be on Umang.
You're still looking over your shoulder.
Pardon me?
You're still looking over your shoulder, but the Prime Minister in his address on the 15th of August made it very clear. This is time now for competitive federalism. So, why are you being so nervous, Mr. Ranjan?
No, but now the thing has reached another level. So as you would know, Government of India also releases funds to states. Now it is making some of these requirements mandatory. So I'm very happy that Government of India is guiding all of us in a very positive way. And that is how it should be.
That is exactly how it should be. So let me end then by asking you, Mr. Ranjan, before we let you go. We're talking about creating of these digital ecosystems, and you gave us some flavor of what the state is attempting to do. I want to link this back to something that we have, of course, been talking about, and I know that the state of Telangana is very proud of that achievement, and that is creating a startup ecosystem and a startup hub. You've done that at T-Hub. How are you marrying your aspirations on the digital side in collaboration with what is being done within the T-Hub through the accelerator programs, through the innovation programs, etc.?
See, so as I said, 7.5 years ago when we prepared our Digital Telangana program, we also simultaneously brought out a policy to support innovation and entrepreneurship. And while it spoke about physical infrastructure, which eventually materialized in the form of T-Hub, we also made a very bold pronouncement in our startup policy, which was that if the startup has a homegrown startup, that is, a startup which is incubating or accelerating in Telangana, if they have a product or solution which is of relevance to the government, we will procure it bilaterally. See, this is a very bold thing to announce. Typically, government procurement processes are quite complicated. You have to participate in a bid. You have to outbid someone else. And obviously startups many times are not even eligible to participate in the bids. They don't have any great net worth, any track record. So we have done away with all these things. Many states are still grappling with how do they simplify their procurement rules, how do they give some merit to startups, etc. But look at the boldness in Telangana. We have completely done away with procurement. If you are a startup and if you have something relevant to offer, I'll procure it bilaterally. So this has encouraged startups to look at solutions which are of relevance to the government. And obviously, solutions that are relevant to the government are those which eventually end up solving some of the most pressing problems of the common citizen. See, our Chief Minister, he's unlike our Minister who has very hands-on familiarity with the world of commerce, technology, etc. Chief Minister has a different kind of a background. So whenever we go to him, tell him about some of our technology achievements, IT achievements, I mean, he appreciates all that, but he at the end of it always asks, is this going to benefit the common person? So his view of technology is that unless it makes a material difference in the life of a common citizen, it is of no worth. So the startup ecosystem also has been given the same messaging, the same signal that if you are incubating in Telangana, bring solutions relevant for agriculture, for healthcare, for education, for all the challenges which people face day in and day out.
Well, Mr. Ranjan, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much for taking us through the milestones achieved by the state of Telangana in being able to take the Digital India story forward. It's been very interesting to see the convergence between the central mission and the state's mission as well. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Mr. Jayesh Ranjan.
Well, thank you to both of you. That was literally like the extra bonus we got and the cherry on top. That was very enlightening for me. Thank you to both of you for an extremely insightful journey on how the state of Telangana is harnessing the power of digital technologies to its advantage. Well, moving on, ladies and gentlemen, with 71% of 5G spectrum sold in after recently concluded 7 days of bidding spread over 40 rounds, has ranked in over 1.5 lakh crore rupees for the government. The fifth generation telecom services are likely to be launched in India by October, as the government aims to allocate the spectrum soon. 5G is going to be the future of the internet in India. So the question now is, by when and how will it foster India's Techade? The upcoming session will deep dive into how the adoption of disruptive technologies, innovative business models, regulatory efforts and shared services will enjoy an upward growth trajectory. To take the discussion forward, may I please invite on stage CNBC TV 18's IT and Telecom editor Reema Tendulkar for a panel discussion titled 5G to Foster India's Techade. I would also like to call upon stage K. Rajaraman, DOT Secretary, Akhil Gupta, Vice Chairman, Bharti Enterprises, Rajan Vagadia, Country Manager, Qualcomm India, and Anand Bhaskar, Managing Director for the Global Service Provider Business for India and SARC, Cisco. Also, I would like to call upon stage, he's stuck in traffic, will be here soon, is Madhav Seth, CEO Realme India, VP Realme and President Realme International Business Group. Over to you, Reema.
Thank you very much for that. Now 5G holds the promise of 100 times faster speed and lag-free connectivity. Coupled with artificial intelligence, IoT, AR, VR, emerging technologies like robotics, it can enable a lot of use cases across sectors: healthcare, agriculture, e-commerce, manufacturing, education, and 5G will form the bedrock of the technological developments of this decade. But the idea of a Techade is not only increased use of technology, it should also be inclusive, it should have a socio-economic impact, and 5G can help India bridge its digital divide and bring in inclusive growth. So to talk about how we can fully realize the 5G potential and help usher in India's Techade, it's my pleasure to once again warmly welcome our panelists here on the stage, and we await Madhav Seth of Realme joining us in moments from now. Thank you very much. Sir, Rajaram, my first question is, the 5G auctions have been a resounding success. Sunil Bharti Mittal said, "In my 30 years, this is a first. No fuss, no follow-up, no running around corridors, no tall claims. This is ease of doing business in its full glory." 5G auctions are done. What is next? And, as an opening remark, how do you think 5G will help foster, bring in India's Techade by bringing innovation, inclusivity, while having a socio-economic impact?
Thank you. The task of the government was actually to ensure that the climate for rollout of 5G is put in place in the first instance, while spectrum auction was part of the process. I think the preparation started a little long ago. I think as early as 2017 when we decided to set up a 5G test bed. So with IIT Madras and several other IITs and Samir, one of our research institutions. So the last several years have been hard work in terms of supporting, helping, assisting, facilitating the ecosystem players, especially the startups and the deep tech startups, to actually work on these technologies ahead of time. So while that be the case, I think the government also took a lot of efforts in unlocking spectrum, because spectrum doesn't come, I mean, it's already deployed in several other uses. So getting the spectrum unlocked and putting them to the market took a lot of effort. In fact, because there were several other stakeholders like defense, I mean, and many other users who had to part with some of their spectrum, which could be then auctioned. Of course, the auction process was itself took a lot of, quite some time. But nevertheless, I think at the end of the day, I mean, I would like to say that the job of the government as part of the auction process was to essentially put out more spectrum in the market, because essentially India is one of the countries where the spectrum per population is actually low. I mean, in fact, for the kind of explosion in data which we're seeing now, we need more spectrum per population. So therefore, from that perspective, I think we have it's a good beginning, and we believe that this will spawn not only new use cases, because 5G is obviously a different technology with a number of enterprise use cases, and also promises greater speed, low latency, higher reliability, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, I think this is a great opportunity for innovation to happen, because essentially innovation happens around new technology. And I think 5G that way promises to be disruptive in its use cases, I mean, I think. So, and therefore, from that perspective, we are quite excited. We will continue to work with the industry to actually develop these use cases. We look forward to a very robust and a planned long-term rollout.
Okay, so innovation is a key factor that you're keeping in mind. I want to talk, sir, a bit about inclusivity. 5G, they say, can help bridge India's digital divide. You know, while Telangana is making a lot of efforts to make sure optical fiber reaches every household in Telangana, the problem is it's still very hard. 2/3 of India is in rural areas where a cable, a fiber, finds it very hard to reach. Most of us have mobile connectivity, but the speeds are not very high. So when we switch to 5G, we will have very high speed and high quality broadband-like experience, which can usher in a lot of innovation, enable the use cases that you're talking about. So when this happens outside of the metros, it will help India bridge its digital divide. So my question is that 5G right now is going to be rolled out only in the key cities, in the metros, I think 11 in October, and it will take a couple of years before it becomes pan-India. So in a way, if the operators are right now going to cater to the creamy areas, only the metros, will it not deepen the digital divide rather than bridge it? Your thoughts on how 5G can foster inclusivity?
Well, you know, all telecom networks, by very nature, start from a focal point, and then like a circle, they keep expanding. So that's the very nature of telecom networks, and 5G will be no different. So it's not surprising that they have to start from the cities. But my feeling is that the penetration of 5G handsets, which is critical, because without 5G handsets, even if you provide the network, it won't work. So that is going to rise so quickly that nobody can predict how many years it will take for it to go to the deep part of the country. But I think it will be much quicker than what we are all expecting.
Your own estimate, when we could have 5G pan-India?
Well, I think we are in a 100-meter race, so keep running as fast as you can. Don't worry about how long it takes. We'll do our level best to reach as soon as we can.
Rajaraman, your thoughts on inclusivity?
5G is new to most parts of the world, I think, though, of course, a number of countries have launched it. The rollout will be gradual, because as and even the telecom service providers have taken a measured step, because obviously they would like to see how revenues grow, etc. So it will be a measured rollout. 4G will continue to be the base load system. While 5G builds up, it will definitely reach out to the rural areas. And let me also say this. See, today the 4G covers almost like 98% of the subscribers. Now the Honorable Prime Minister has taken a decision to actually saturate the country with 4G. So the technology that we are going to adopt will also be 5G enabled. To switch on 5G will not be very difficult. I think most of the technologies of 4G can be upgraded to 5G without much of effort. So I think once the use cases build up, I think this country, the 5G will really explode. That's our expectation. And let me also say, see, the Indian digital user is not to be underestimated. We lead in terms of the data use, I think, in fact, in the most parts of the world, the average data use is about 12 GB per user per month. But India has already reached about 18, I think, which I think shows that I think the uptake will be very fast.
No, absolutely. I think 4G helped India's digital consumption go up by 6.5 times, data consumption. Rajan, to take up on that point about use cases. B2B value proposition of 5G can be well imagined, right? AI and 5G will help autonomous cars. We could have robotic surgeries taking place remotely in healthcare. But what about from a B2C point of view? Now, we still don't seem to have a killer 5G app or a use case for which we require 5G. Now, 4G enabled movie streaming, which was not earlier possible with 3G. What is it that you see from a customer-consumer point of view will be that compelling use case for which 5G is needed, and that will drive adoption?
Okay, I think I'll ask you a counter question. What was the killer use case for 4G? What was the killer use case for 3G? Typically, use cases do not generally, the killer ones, you don't see them born till you have the G rolled out. Now, I would like to touch upon the topic which was discussed as to what is going to happen in 5G in India. With 4G, we address the need of the mobile customer, right? And we talk about 12 GB, 19 GB actually. That's sort of consumption per month, from 1 GB to 19 GB. And if I ask any one of us that what is it that you are doing which consumes 90, I don't think we have a very clear answer how we ended up using 19 GB. And it's still growing. What is missing is the connectivity in the home. Broadband inside the home, especially during the pandemic, we all saw that all of us, the school moved inside the home, the office moved inside the home, and we needed broadband inside the home. With 5G, what you're going to see is that, especially with this super successful auction, and I would say it is one of the best things that has happened to this country, and as we watch global, and now we watch India, millimeter wave, and the way the government has managed to offer, and the operators have taken up the challenge of taking huge spectrum, millimeter wave is going to solve the issue of home broadband. So what I would see is that the home needed fiber. Fiber is a difficult proposition, it's going to take its own time, and with millimeter wave you will see the home getting the fiber. That's the first consumer use case, because now you have broadband inside the home. Apart that, of course, you can talk about zillions of use cases. I think the operators, Airtel, Jio, Vodafone, have over the last 1 year, during the trials, have showcased multiple use cases. I would still say that let's not define what's a killer use case. Basically, 5G is the need of this country, primarily to exactly address the digital divide, because 5G is going to be going to the rural. With millimeter wave, we are going to reach out to the end of the villages which had been difficult with fiber. So my belief is that 5G is going to be all pervasive very quickly.
So from a B2C point of view, the biggest use case will be home broadband, fixed wireless access?
To start with?
To start with. Anand, coming to you on that, would you like to add any more potential use cases on B2C? And then we'll get chatting about B2B and the value proposition.
See, as you said, I think on the B2C side, video will continue to be one of the biggest, but you are already getting 4G, but how do you sort of look at ultra speed is going to be one of the killer use cases as we go along. And clearly, as Rajan mentioned, these things will evolve as the network grows. If 4G was all about feeds and speeds, 5G will be about providing the experience to the end user. With more and more developments happening in the case of, say, metaverse, or in the case of AR, VR, how do you sort of provide the shopper the same experience that you have when you're shopping? So I think those are the things that people will start working on as this becomes more and more ubiquitous. But I think, as you mentioned, the biggest benefit or biggest use cases will be on the B2B side. Today, telecom service providers gain a big chunk of their revenues from the consumer mobility side, and there is a huge opportunity on the enterprise side, which is what we are working closely with all the operators on. I think there is enormous potential across all of these areas. I mean, during the pandemic, some of us in the knowledge sector perhaps had the luxury of working for extended periods of time from home. How do you extend that to beyond the knowledge sector workers? Why would they not have the luxury or the advantage of having to work from wherever they want rather than working from there? That's where all the use cases of manufacturing, agriculture, all of these come into play. And I think that is where 5G will have a big role to play going forward, is the way we see it.
No, absolutely. I think 5G will form the backbone of digital infrastructure for enterprises. Let me also welcome Madhav Shade of Realme into the discussion now. Madhav, thank you very much for joining in. I want to complete the point about 5G for consumers, and then we'll get chatting about enterprise and how we can make India a global powerhouse. Now, for 5G to be ubiquitous, we also need 5G-enabled handsets to be fairly cheap. What is the price range? That would be ideal.
First of all, thank you very much for hosting me over here, and thank you all the panelists. I've been old friends to a few of them. I think talking about the pricing of the 5G, the need of an hour is to bring in more affordable 5G phones in India. Because I always believe that basically if we do not have the devices, more affordable devices will not bring the adoption of 5G, and that is extremely crucial. So we at Realme, even before the 5G services have launched, we were the first one to launch the 5G devices in India. We have already have more than 5 million users who already are on 5G in India at this point of time, ranging from our all set of handsets. And more than 50% of the portfolio would be 5G. What we are trying to bring is about $100, $150 price segments, $150 plus price segments to bring to 5G as well. And I think that's what the vision we carry in 2022 and 2023. Probably doing that, I believe that basically because handsets, as I said, is one of the most crucial part for adopting 5G, being the hub for controlling all the IoT ecosystem devices. Where he said about B2B, I said B2C also would be one of the biggest thing. Everything around you, which is conventional, will move to smart. Which means that basically everything will be controlled through a smartphone. Which means that basically rural people will be more connected to the urbans. And that is the most important part where the IoT ecosystem will come into play. So for us, the most important role is to make sure that how many more and more people come onto the 5G headset devices.
And for that, you're saying the price should be $150 or even lower?
We have a handsets already starting from $150. Right?
Okay.
What we are trying to bring is to bring more affordable 5G phones into the ecosystem.
And that would be $100?
That's something which is not possible at the current point of time, but probably yes. I think through the ecosystem players over a period of time, maybe it would be possible. It's also all about the economies of scale. It's not possible just on the segments, but the people adoption after the services roll out will also play a crucial factor on this particular fact.
So just one clarification since we're on the topic of handsets. There was an article in the paper today which said that the government wants Chinese companies out of the sub 12,000 category handset. Would you like to comment on that? Is that something that the government is thinking about?
I wouldn't want to comment on that.
All right. Akhil, on pricing, right? Globally, the experience has been that 5G pricing is not at a significant premium to 4G, maybe at best 10%. What is your sense of 5G pricing? And would you say that telecom companies and operators have not made a return which is commensurate with their capital investment into migrating from 3G to 4G? Now, 4G, for instance, enabled a whole world of applications, right? It ushered in the app economy. It helped the rise of SaaS economies. But it's not that operators financially benefited so much. So your thoughts first on 5G ARPU. How much higher do you think it can be? And then do you think telcos have not been able to maximize and benefit from this?
Well, the financial health of the operators, you're touching a very raw nerve, so I'll talk about it later. Let me step back and talk about the use cases, though it's not part of the question, because it's very importantly linked to the pricing. I think one very important use case which we all miss is the mobile services itself. I mean, the fact remains that with the handset penetration, 5G will be used for mobile services, the maximum. Then comes the home broadband, then come the enterprises, and also please don't forget that all the technological advancement will need more and more bandwidth. Therefore, this is the bedrock that will be needed. On the pricing, well, I think it really depends on the scale. My feeling is that ultimately, if the penetration of handsets is very quickly, it will be another service. And because of higher speeds, people will consume more data, which will give us more revenue. But yes, coming back to your main question, I guess the health of this industry has got to improve, because this industry will keep requiring billions and billions of dollars of investment. And weak financial companies or bankrupt companies can't do that. Only healthy financial companies can do it. So we do need to ensure that.
Okay, that's a raw nerve, so I'm not going to delve more and talk more about it. But now let's talk about the promise of 5G in the B2B segment, in connecting enterprises in the connected solution space and the opportunity that it ushers in. Rajan, the TREI said that TREI has predicted that 5G can have a cumulative economic impact of $1 trillion, not just in pure 5G connectivity, but in terms of the associated technologies like AI, IoT. Can you tell us how we can realize that?
I think that's a very important point, and it's when you talk about just the $1 trillion economy, it's also about the number of jobs that it's going to create, right? It's associated with that. Actually, I definitely don't want to miss the point about the handsets, because I think I trivialized it, which is not true. But more or less in the world of 5G, handsets become incidental. Till 4G, everything was about handsets. With 5G, it's not just about handsets. Handsets becomes an integral part. It's given, it's taken for granted. And by the way, as Madhav mentioned, one thing we should be very proud of in our country. This was the first time that we had 5G devices 2 years before the services, or 2.5 years before the services were launched. And Madhav was the first one who launched the first 5G device in India. It needs a lot of courage, right? Today we are at some price point where we believe 50% of the market is going to be 5G this year. And next year, probably we'll have 150 million to 200 million 5G phones already in the country. So by the time the operators switch on the network, you're talking about a serious 80 million devices already existing, right? So that is one. Now coming to your question about the B2B, the way to look at 5G is it's not no more just about the smartphone. It's about everything also outside the smartphone, because the first time it's a type of a horizontal platform. It actually touches everything. Whether you take healthcare, whether you take Industry 4.0, whether you take private networks. I'll take only one example, because otherwise you can go in deeper into all of them. Take one example of private networks. Enterprises till now used to rely on less automation. With all what we are seeing happening globally, automation has become an integral part of any industry. 5G is going to help there. Operators will play a critical role in offering 5G private networks to the enterprises. I think that's one of the biggest and the fastest and the earliest service we would likely see coming up in the industry use case.
Rajaraman, since the topic of private network came up, I want to get your thoughts in. A lot of technology companies, big tech companies are asking for the government to give out the CNPN license, the captive non-public license. You're accepting applications right now, but the DoT is still conducting demand studies. How soon before you think you can hand out the private license for 5G for captive use?
Essentially, if you look at the policies that has been already put in place, there are 4 ways to set up enterprises networks. The first 3 have already been enabled. I mean, I think using the telecom service providers networks and the spectrum. Right. So, and there is a third method by which I think you can also apply for a license and then get spectrum on lease from the telecom service providers. The fourth method, wherein we are proposing a direct allocation of spectrum, I think there's a lot of work to be done. So I think essentially now we have undertaken a demand study, and then thereafter I think we'll need to unlock spectrum, because essentially some of the spectrum which TRAI has recommended is already under primary use by some other users. So that has to be examined, and then after that we need to refer it back to TRAI. So I think there's a long process, and I think it takes some time, I think.
But what are the initial indications from your demand study about direct allocation?
It's just about a few days old, I think the platform. So I think maybe by early September, I think we'll have some idea of what kind of demand that we have. But we expect the demand to be reasonable, because essentially if you look at the data which I think I can see from some of the international publications, there are about some 600, 700 networks which are across the world. So I guess it will be a slow uptake, but I think definitely I think our policies will facilitate growth of enterprise networks.
Do you think in 2 years we should be able to directly allocate?
No, that is a matter I think to be dealt with in due course of time.
Anand, coming on the topic of private networks, we speak to a lot of operators, private vendors, etc. And the feedback is that private networks are emerging a little more slowly than the bullish headlines seem to suggest. There are countless 5G pilots taking place and 5G handsets are taking off, but it will still be a while before private networks, 5G networks become the norm. Can you tell us what the global experience has been?
See, I think when it comes the private networks, the policy itself became clear a few months back with the government allowing the private networks. So, and these are all long lead items, right? The setting up of the infrastructure, getting this one ready, working with the finding the appropriate use cases. Especially, I believe that this is going to be more for, as Rajan mentioned, hazardous areas, ensuring that and where there is security requirement or working in hazardous areas, be it in mines, so on and so forth, where there is large areas to be covered. All of this does take time, and it also needs a partnership. And there's also significant use cases which needs to sort of get developed right there, and sort of then build on that. So it will take time. It's not going to be overnight because these are long lead items, setting up of the infrastructure. The telecom operators are already way up the block because they have been preparing for 5G services, for consumer, for B2B, a couple of years prior, as Mr. Rajaram mentioned. So I think that's going to take time, but definitely there is going to be opportunity, as I mentioned, for everyone, for the enterprises, for private. As far as private 5G networks are concerned, we will see interest from the telecom service provider. We will see large system integrators working closely with equipment manufacturers like us to sort of build those networks and look at use cases around that.
One of the challenges we will possibly face in fostering this decade, which is backed and powered by digital technologies, is we will need a lot more by way of chips and semis, etc. So Madhav, I would like you to come in. Now, thanks to the government's PLI scheme, India has emerged as the second largest manufacturer of handsets by volumes. But if I look at electronic goods and component as a whole, India perhaps is still operating below its potential, because the electronic good and components import is the second highest after crude in our overall bill. Can you talk a little bit more about that, and what steps do you think more government aid needs to be taken, since you are in that space?
I think government has been taking a lot of initiatives in bringing the entire ecosystems of electronic components over here. For manufacturing of smartphones, we need more than 300 different set of components. The best part about it is that government has already taken initiatives from past few years where we've been bringing ecosystems, and we've been relying less on imports. So now 60% of the components are still manufactured in India for the smartphones itself. So I think there's a lot of way to go ahead, but probably I believe we are on the right track. Along with the government, I think probably we'll be able to bring the entire ecosystem back to India.
Rajaraman, according to you, what will be the biggest challenge that we'll face?
The 5G requires, obviously, a very robust backhaul. So I think the government has actually recently released a policy for E-band allocation as well. So I think the operators will therefore have access to fairly robust backhaul. But that should not be the end of the road. And I think we need to move for fiberization of towers. So I think that's currently around 35% of the mobile towers currently are fiberized. So we expect that that over the next several years, we should be able to push it to about 70–80%. And for that, I think we had put in place a very good ROW policy, right of way policy. We essentially, optic fiber networks require ROW policies. And state governments have been very considerate, and they have worked cooperatively with the central government. And we've actually reduced the charges for laying optic fibers, the timelines for clearances, and so on and so forth. So therefore, we believe that we are on the right track. I think we should be able to push towards greater fiberization in the next couple of years.
Mr. Gupta, same question to you. India's aspiration is that we will become a digital powerhouse, globally competitive. What will be the biggest challenges that we'll face, according to you?
Well, 5G being on the higher, bands, naturally the propagation is poor. And that means a whole lot of new infrastructure, many more sites. And like Mr. Rajaraman said, you have to connect the sites on fiber. There won't be any place for putting microwaves. That is the biggest challenge. And I must compliment DOT, and in particular Mr. Rajaraman, because they have been so proactive in looking at this problem holistically. We have had extensive discussions as operators, as the digital infrastructure providers, with the DOT on these issues. And I believe the new ROW policy should be released soon. So absolutely another great example of ease of doing business. We are proactively, even before TRA has actually come out with the recommendations. DOT is coming out with the policy. That is the biggest impediment. And if we can solve this problem of street furniture availability, the right of way of laying fiber, putting up the towers, I think we'll win this battle.
Okay, I would like to get some closing comments in. Rajan, what according to you are the biggest lessons that we can draw from global experience? Now, China launched its 5G services 3 years ago. 5G is there in many other countries. What according to you are the lessons that we can draw?
I think, one is the lessons learned or what we can adopt. The good thing this time around is that unlike 4G where we were a lot delayed, 5G is coming almost concurrent to where the global ramp-ups are happening, right? We are around 2.5 years behind. Some of the lessons learned globally are going to be implemented in India. Let's take one example of a very clear global use case. For example, in case of 4G, VoLTE, or voice over LTE, was one of the services which was otherwise called a premium service globally. India took it as a basic service. Now, today, India is probably the largest country globally to leverage a very futuristic technology called VoLTE. Now that we have adopted it, it has become a global lesson. So what I see is in case of 5G also, what looks to be a lesson which we are learning from the global world, yes, eventually because of our scale and economics, we are going to be driving lessons for the world out of India rather than we learning out of the global markets.
And I must say that in 5G, maybe we're 2.5 years behind. 6G, both India and China have said 2030 is when we would be looking at 6G auctions. So we're going to be, right there with the rest of the world when it comes to 6G, and we're bridging that gap very, very fast. Anand, you constantly speak to a lot of companies. You're working with so many partners in this entire ecosystem. What are your conversations like?
See, I think the conversations with our clients and our customers and governments are primarily around 2 or 3 areas. What could be, see, one important thing is with this mobile economy, apps are becoming the business. Applications were earlier on an adjunct to the business for supporting business. Today you look at everything that the Telangana Secretary spoke earlier about or the earlier speaker spoke about. Apps are becoming the business. How do you enable the apps to sort of be more 5G ready, have more and more better user experience? That is what the conversation is. How do I sort of leverage the power of 5G, which enables certain technologies like segment routing, which gives you a fit-for-use bandwidth is the way I would call it, right? Somebody needs a batch processing which requires a huge amount of data to go through. Somebody requires a very, very low latency to perform certain type of applications. I think those are the conversations that are going on both on the consumer front and from a business perspective as well.
Madhav, you said Realme has shipped out 5 million 5G handsets. If we meet 1 year down the line, what would that number look like? Incrementally, if you're selling 5 phones, how many of them are 5G now?
50% of our portfolios are 5G. As per some recent data which we studied about, by 2027 there will be 500 million 5G users in India with handsets having on their hands. So I believe there's a huge potential of 5G. As I said, anything above $150 going forward would be moving towards 5G probably. So more than our current 50% of our portfolio is 5G at this point of time. And we intend to continue to grow on that particular point.
Mr. Rajaraman, one final question then. What is next on the government's agenda? What are the milestones we should expect?
See, when we look at the previous generations of technologies in the telecom sector, I think the manufacturing and service design in India, that bus was missed. So this is where the government is very focused. I think the CEO Niti Aayog is there, I think so here. So the so he was the architect of the PLI revolution. So essentially, manufacturing in India, I think, is the biggest challenge, I think. So, and therefore, I think the PLI scheme has laid the foundation for getting in manufacturers within the country, in which he talked about. But I think we have gone one step further, and we have also put in place a design-linked insurance scheme, incentive scheme, wherein we are providing incentives for companies to make designs in India. The IP should be registered in India. So we are not resting with that. We have we are also working with on research and development. In fact, we have the budget announced a 5% USOF R&D fund, so which will amount to nearly about 500 crores per year. So we are going to fund a number of companies in India to actually to do deep research and come out with their own designs. And let me say that in 4G, I think we have a number of local companies which have come out with radio access networks. They have also come out with core designs. CDOT has come out with its 4G core, which has been tested recently. And in 5G, we are already there. I mean, there are a number of companies with networks in a box for enterprise. There are companies which already have a radio access network. So I guess the focus will be on R&D and developing technologies which are domestic.
And 5G will be the backbone to spur India's manufacturing. Gentlemen, this has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you very much for your time, information and insight.
Well, thank you, Rima and gentlemen. Moving on, India has charted a unique path to digitization that is unmatched anywhere else in the world. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the new and emerging technologies are significantly impacting the processes and aspirations in critical sectors like agriculture, education, health, etc. Deployment of these technologies has the potential to disrupt, as also to change the dynamics and delivery models in these sectors, thereby unleashing a huge wave of innovation that can add immense value. The upcoming keynote address titled Charting the Roadmap to $1 Trillion Digital Economy aims to throw light on how India's digital economy can unlock productivity and value through transformation, infrastructure, applications and ecosystems. May I have the honor of inviting on stage Mr. Amitabh Kant, Sherpa G20 on stage to deliver the keynote address.
So at the outset, let me compliment Cnbc for its Digital India Vision 7.0. That means this program has been going on for about 7 years. It's a remarkable success story, and it's really been a great, I think to my mind, a great collaborative partnership with the digital initiative that Government of India has launched and the huge digital revolution that has taken place in India. So I've moved on from being CEO Niti Aayog, and I've been a long-term believer. I'm now the G20 Sherpa, which is going to be held next year, but I've been a long-term believer in digitization. I've been a long-term believer in data. I've been a long-term believer in using data for improving governance. And I've been a long-term believer in real-time ranking based on data. And one of the key programs of this government was the Aspirational District Program across 115 districts, where on 49 indicators we were ranking districts on real-time data, on performance of these most backward districts. They were not called backward by the Prime Minister, they were called the aspirational districts. But on 49 indicators across health, education, nutrition, we ranked them on the basis of data. We created competition, and that led to really good governance on ground. And this good governance based on data really transformed governance, because ranking of districts was available on each indicator minute by minute, hours by hours, and every district knew whether they were going up or coming down, and that competition really led to the transformation of these districts in a very big way. So I am a great believer that actually if India is to grow at rapid rates of 9 to 10% per annum, year after year, there are only two ways, and that is one, using technology to leapfrog. Many of the things that we push through, the production-linked incentive looked at cutting-edge areas. Quite often in India, we get into the sunset areas of growth. We don't look at the sunrise areas of growth. So sunrise areas of growth we looked at as the production-linked incentive scheme, which was, electronic manufacturing. And, many mobile manufacturers have really made a huge, huge impact, particularly Apple and Samsung. But it's very important. This question was asked, so I'm responding to that. It's very important in several of these sectors to build up component manufacturing in India. And component manufacturing is really the key, because that will give you greater value addition in due course, and the backward-forward linkage will take place. So when we did the PLI, we looked at electronic manufacturing, we looked at advanced chemistry cell, battery manufacturing, we looked at several areas where India could be a global champion. And I think the passion, the energy, the vibrancy on the technology sectors that you see is really the key to driving India's growth story of 9 to 10% over a 3-decade period. And without that, it will be very difficult for India to grow. So as I said, I've moved on from being CEO Niti Aayog. I'm now the G20 Sherpa. And G20 is critical because India takes over the presidency this year. And G20 countries actually comprise of about 85% of the global GDP. They comprise of over about 78% of the global trade. They comprise of about 90% of the global patents. And they comprise of almost about 67% of the global population. And it's very, very important that we use this opportunity to really build the India narrative. You will never get an opportunity where it's G20, but there will be the top 42 leaders of the world present in India. And you will have about 190 meetings. Now, you hold a G20 meeting once in about 20 years. This is the first time India will be hosting it. So, how do you differentiate India from the rest of the world? And how do you build an India narrative is really the key. And in Digital India Vision 7.0, it's very important to understand why this digital vision is very important. And I've been a great believer that while China took on this strategy of building roads, the BRI strategy, that is the Belt and Road Initiative of building infrastructure across the world, from Africa to Asia to East Asia. That has led to huge challenges in terms of rising costs of projects, payments not being made on time, many countries falling into a debt trap, etc. So can India present an alternative which is totally digital in character to the rest of the world? Can India present a cloud in a box to the rest of the world which can transform the world through health and education and nutrition? And can this be India's great strategy as a counter to China's BRI strategy? So I was thinking about this, and my view is that if you look in the past, Google, Amazon, Meta, Apple, Microsoft, they've all been at the forefront of what has been termed as the Cambrian explosion in innovation and value creation over the last 2 decades. And, actually they've been the key drivers, and they have billion-strong users, and they have if you look at them in total, they have a market value of around $7 trillion US. And they, along with the Chinese firms Alibaba and Tencent, actually dominate the global sphere in digital advertising, commerce, messaging, cloud infrastructure, social media, mobile operating system. All of them is a monopoly of these 5 companies plus Tencent and Alibaba. So what is the alternative that India can present? And, in contrast, India has actually adopted a very unprecedented and a very powerful new approach in public policy governance through the adoption of digital public infrastructure. And that has really enabled India to leapfrog in the traditional evolutionary processes, and actually it has allowed market players to innovate better and much better, and regulators to regulate better. And these public platforms, digital platforms, have all been open source. They have had open APIs, they've been open standard for interoperability, and they have leveraged public data for open innovation models. And they are all based on the core principles of, and this is going to become increasingly an issue that they are, and therefore India's, all these public digital infrastructure are all based on principle of consent-based data sharing protocols, and they are all many of them have been developed in good private-public partnership, and many of them have been very inclusive, and they have reduced the digital divide across the country. So if you look around, they, these are huge sectoral public digital platforms built in India so far. If you look at the identity, it's Aadhaar. If you look at utility, it's DigiLocker and Bharat Bill Pay. If you look at payments, it's UPI, IMPS, AEPS. If you look at vaccination, we came up with CoWIN. If you look at toll collection, we came up with FASTag. In the field of education, it's National Digital Education Architecture. If you look at health, it's the National Digital Health Mission, which has been giving shape to. And if you look at taxation, it's the goods and services tax, which is totally digital, cashless, paperless. So what India has pioneered really is this unique approach. Each platform has actually solved for a need, but jointly has created a very powerful integrated stack over 1 billion people across all states of India and across 22 languages. And that has really been the strength of India. And it is this approach which will actually create a huge economic divide between countries, to my mind, between countries who will, actually be using some of the big tech companies and some which will be leapfrogging ahead on the platform-based approach which India has built up. And all these platforms will actually help to create an alternative model on principles of openness, equity, inclusivity, fairness, transparency, and trust. And this, as data issues come to the forefront increasingly, this will be the challenge across the world. I mean, I just wanted to give you the example of unified payment interface, and I'm one of those who post demonetization actually drove it in a very big way, and I've seen the challenges behind it. And I have not used my debit credit card in the last 2.5, 3 years. The only time I've used it is when I was in San Francisco and I had to hire an Uber about 3 months back. The CoWIN app has been totally paperless, cashless, and I've worked in the traditional fisheries sector of Kerala, where my job was to improve the livelihoods of traditional fishermen. And I was able to provide outboard motors, crafts, fishing nets. But the biggest challenge was to open their bank accounts. And know your customer had to run around physical bank managers 8 to 9 months to open bank accounts for traditional fishermen. They were prone to drinking every day, whatever they could earn. So it was very important to open their bank account, put 50% of the money into their bank account every day. But to open their bank account has been the toughest job I have ever done in my life. It was a nightmare. And from 8 to 9 months of opening a bank account, today you can open a bank account in less than a minute using your biometrics. So I've seen this transformation from 9 months to, less than a minute. I've seen this transformation where, where people from digital cards, and I've been saying this for the last 3 years actually, that India will be the first country which will finish off digital, both debit card, credit cards and ATMs. And when I used to say this, people used to really laugh at me, but that is the reality. I mean, if you look at the payment across UPI, 6 billion monthly transactions, 6 billion monthly transactions valued over 10 lakh crores with close to about 260 million users and a merchant base of 50 million users. Already merchants in 10 countries accept UPI payments, and over 30 countries have expressed interest in adopting UPI. And now French government is entering into a UPI MOU with the national, with NPCI for UPI to be used in France. So that has been the power of UPI. So my belief is that the India stack with its APIs such as Aadhaar authentication, eKYC, eSign, this is a very, very powerful tool, and this will really drive the whole movement. And the platform approach taken by the government on conceptualizing UPI, and when it started, it was just a payment mechanism. But look at what has happened actually in reality. From the payment, what has happened? There are a whole range of new startups. I mean, if you look at out of 106, 107 odd startups, number of them actually started doing cashless, paperless lending. Look at Lending Card, look at Pine Lab. All of them were doing cashless, paperless lending. Unbelievable, unheard of. And then on top of that, you had a number of new startups which started doing personal wealth management. I mean, look at Zerodha, Upstock, all these new companies, new age companies, all of them unicorns. All of them were doing personal wealth management. And then you had a whole range of, my time taking an insurance when I was growing up. Buying an insurance policy was the biggest nightmare going through LIC agents. Look at Digit, look at ACO. 2 minutes you get a digitized, no paper, all paperless, cashless transaction, you get a digital policy, insurance policy. So, I mean, the technological leapfrogging of India digitally has been, according to me, the most remarkable story in the world. No country in the world has been able to achieve it. Totally interoperable, totally open source, and it's just unbelievable what we've achieved. And on top of it, we've allowed private sector all to compete and innovate. So on top of UPI, you have PhonePe competing with Google Pay. Unlike China, we've not created a monopoly out of our indigenous company. We've allowed PhonePe to compete with Google Pay and beat them at it. We've allowed Paytm to compete with WhatsApp. So that has been the remarkable story of private sector innovating on top of it. And this has actually facilitated a very democratic and neutral marketplace with very equitable opportunity of value creation for everyone. And let everybody come and compete in the marketplace. That has been the strategy. Now, it's also important to understand that Beacon protocols in the Indian, is the next big Indian intervention. And in this space, with a very revolutionary open source technology, a very sector agnostic framework, enabling interoperability, we are pushing for, this e-commerce openness and really open network for digital commerce, which ONDC supported by the government of India is being validated by the public sector. And it's in its very first attempt in the world to democratize e-commerce through interoperability. And the network, which went live with a pilot in April 2022, is now providing access and equity to small and medium-sized merchants, and it's being implemented across 32 cities. And in addition to all the other players, now Microsoft has become a part of ONDC. So many big tech companies are realizing this is really the future. So my belief is that ONDC is especially pertinent given that the coverage of retailers using digital commerce in India, which has remained at about 15 just 15,000 out of 120 million retailers. It was just restricted to 15,000 out of 120 million retailers. The estimated size of online shoppers they've projected is to be about 220 million by 2025. And therefore, much like UPI, this will incentivize the private sector, and as ONDC spreads to more and more cities, from 32 cities to 100 cities, etc., you will see the benefit of it playing, really going back to the small town producers, the small town unique, a whole movement of people getting onto e-commerce and moving away from physical sales to actually digital sales. My belief is that the world is actually seeking such innovations, especially in the handling of data. Data will become the crux, it will become the biggest challenge. And India has a proven track record to lead the way, to enable all countries to actually, what India has demonstrated to the rest of the world is that you can design and implement digital public infrastructure. And that is really the key. And by doing digital public infrastructure, you can do consent-based data handling, you can actually drive growth, you can actually transform health, education, vaccination, and you can drive payments, and you can actually really create a unique model. So I think, to my mind, this is really the big story about India's digital story, that India has done something very unique. India has done something which is very different from the rest of the world. What India has done is path-breaking, and this is something where India is way ahead of the rest of the world, particularly the developed world. And this is the big digital story of India, which CNBC needs to broadcast all over the world and make the developed world emulate India in its story. Thank you very much.
As always, we can expect Mr. Amitabh Kant to energize the room, and that's exactly what you've done. To start with, congratulations on your new innings and your appointment as the Sherpa to the G20. Mr. Kant, that's exact. I know you were short on time, so I'm going to keep this brief. I just want to take off from what you said. You said that India needs to present an alternative narrative, and we need to present an alternative to what China has done. If China's idea of expanding its influence and its presence was through physical infrastructure, India should use the digital infrastructure and the digital highway as its narrative. But in order for us to be able to do that, there will be questions asked, for instance, on the regulatory environment, on the fact that we don't have a data protection and a data privacy bill or a law at this point in time, on the fact that we have mandated data localization, whereas in most developed markets, data is free-flowing. Won't this be some of the challenges that you will have to contend with, even as you sell the digital public infrastructure story?
Yeah, Shireen, that's an important point, and the government has already, the draft bill which was ready, the government realizes this. The government has this foresight and vision to understand that you are in a world which is transforming based on data, and that therefore the government scrapped the earlier bill because it had too many recommendations from the Parliamentary Standing Committee, which had made it very in some ways a little convoluted, and the government has gone in for a fresh draft which should be, which to my mind they've said is going to be very expeditiously done, which to my mind will be really path-breaking and transformational, very contemporary, and actually will be a world beater.
Okay, so when we take over the G20 presidency, which happens next year, and I'm sure you've already started work on putting the nuts and bolts together, how are we going to tell this story to the world? What is the narrative going to be, and what are you hopeful of in terms of objectives, in terms of milestones to be achieved at the end of that?
Yeah, so the way we'll do it is to get CNBC to do Digital 7.5 and broadcast the story all over the world. There'll be nobody better than Shireen to do this.
That we're already doing,
yeah.
And thank you very much
but
for the vote of confidence.
important thing is to create some high-level principles around it, get in discussions with the developed world, because there are two different philosophies. You know, one is on digital public infrastructure, which India has created, which we think is really way ahead of what the European world has done. It's way ahead of what America has done, where the big tech rules. But American government is driven by big tech. And therefore, it's very important to tell them how transformational is the story of India and how it can really transform the rest of the world. And many European countries realize that this is the way forward. I mean, if you talk to European countries, many of them realize that this is the way forward, and therefore a lot of convincing, a lot of interaction, a lot of discussions will have to be held with them to take this forward.
You know, one of the other challenges as we move more and more into a digitized world, Mr. Kant, is the fact that there should be a harmonization as far as standards are concerned. There should be a harmonization of rules and regulations. Otherwise, it's getting to be too complicated. And one would argue that perhaps the G20 could be the route to being able to achieve that. Should there be a global governance framework as far as data is concerned? Do you believe that that could be the role of the G20?
No, G20 has a very key and critical role in several areas. Building up a new financial architecture, building up a new digital architecture, looking at how climate adaptation and mitigation has to be financed, which many of the developed countries, despite commitment in COP21, have not lived up to. So those are very key issues which will be discussed, debated, and taken forward. But it's also important to understand that we are doing this, Indonesia right now is doing this in the context of the Russia-Ukraine war. And there is a huge complexity because of external situations of both the war in Russia-Ukraine and the China-Taiwan crisis. So you have to bring in to be able to do transformational things, to be able to build up a completely new narrative around climate, or to be able to build a new, to drive a completely new vision around digitization, or on accelerating the pace of sustainable development goals, much of which will be driven by digitization and data, you need a huge amount of political capital globally.
You know, you said that you haven't used your debit card or your credit card in many, many years. It's a good thing that Mastercard is no longer a card company, it's a payment company. There are partners here this evening. They would have been very happy to hear you say that.
So, you know, I mean, since they are your sponsors, I realized that the best thing for Mastercards to grow and progress in India would be to partner NPCI.
I think that partnership in many ways and many forms is already happening. But let me
why I'm saying this is if you already have about 260 to 270 million users on UPI. So if you want to grow in numbers, I mean the real value will come from volumes. So India has created a completely different business model from what they are used to. Now, this is a path-breakingly different business model. Now, if you're going to continue with the American model for the rest of the world, it'll be very difficult for them to make headway here. And it's very important that they actually technologically leapfrog by doing something very, very different, which is about getting the big volumes together.
Well, Mr. Kant, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very, very much for joining us here at the Digital India Vision 7.0 Summit, and we look forward to partnering with you for the 7.5 edition of it. But always a pleasure. Thanks very much.
Thanks. Always a pleasure to be a part of this. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Kant and Shireen, for that enlightening discussion. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, India has made a massive transition to a cashless economy riding on cheap internet data, high smartphone penetration, and an easier onboarding process, which has put the country's robust digital payment ecosystem on the forefront. However, cybersecurity is one of the most critical challenges faced by the stakeholders of the digital payment ecosystem. Digital payment carry the risk of data breaches and other security risks. Given this scenario, the next panel titled Securing the Cashless Payment Ecosystem will focus on how organizations can adopt agile security testing methods based on automation, and why the security boundaries of various players must be extended to end users, third parties, and other ecosystem partners. To dwell deeper into the issue, may I please invite on stage CNBC TV 18's Associate Editor Ritu Singh to take forward the discussion. Let me also invite on stage Abhijit Bose, Head of WhatsApp India, Aditya Murthy, VP Digital Partnership South Asia Mastercard, Nitin Chugh, SBI Deputy Managing Director and Head of Digital Banking and Transformation, Akhil Handa, Chief Digital Officer, Bank of Baroda, Kush Mehra, Chief Business Officer and President, Pine Labs. And also joining us live virtually is Arundhati Bhattacharya, Chairperson and CEO, Salesforce India. Over to you, Ritu.
Thank you very much for that introduction. The topic of this discussion is securing the digital or the cashless payment ecosystem in India. And, through this evening, we've heard fabulous stories, and we can be nothing but proud of what India has achieved. When it comes to the digital payment ecosystem, we are the pride of the world in real-time payments. 6 billion transactions clocked in July alone through UPI. The Bharat Bill Payment System, the National Electronic Toll Collection, all of that, are stories to write home about. What I do want to focus on is how cashless really has India become today, spurred by demonetization and then the pandemic. But when it comes to coming to the heart of India, the hinterlands, the last pin code, how far have we come? What really stands out to you, Abhijit, in India's digital payment journey so far?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me here. It's a great question. And I think, first of all, we are at the forefront of the world. There's no question about it. It's been a pretty amazing journey. And I think we're also in the very first innings. So when we think about the hinterlands or rural India or kind of the underserved sectors, we're ready for that now. I came to Bangalore 17 years ago from Silicon Valley, and then as in now, I believe that the technology revolution was imminent. It's taken a while for the foundations and the building blocks to develop. You needed the first 100 and the first 200 million to kind of get on board for us to understand how this works, how we calibrate, make sure this is secure, make sure this is the ecosystem works together. Now it's time for the next 400 million, right? And I think once you, and there's two things that have happened that I think actually make this that moment that we've been waiting for. First of all, on the demand side, those underserved sectors who've never had access is exceptionally important, never had access to any of these services or the digital economy or whatever, forget payments, that's just an enabler of something bigger. Access is now there, and it's been solved because data networks, platforms, WhatsApp is one of those platforms, are in people's pockets. On the supply side, the service providers who've never been able to reach these people, I mean, there's ultimately been a massive friction that kept us from getting to where we wanted to get to.
All right, let me also bring in Ms. Arundhati Bhattacharya, who's joining us virtually, aptly so, on a digital panel. We just heard Amitabh Khan say there is value in volumes. Let me ask you then, how do we get those volumes? How do we expand these services, ensure that, the achievements we've had so far in digital payments are accessible to that last mile customer? And you bring your experience both from the financial institution side, which of course is a huge role to play, and also now from the tech side. What to your mind are some of the low-hanging fruits perhaps to tap?
I think, one of the first things that we need to understand very clearly is what started off this digital revolution. The first thing I think that really started it off, we'd been trying it for a very long while, but it got really kicked off with the UIDAI, which is the KYC that enabled us to open accounts in the very, remote areas of India. Of course, UIDAI was one of the things. The other things, of course, as we call it, the Jam Trinity, which is the mobiles, the connectivity that was there, and then the Jan Dhan accounts. So I think people getting into the first and foremost step was people getting into the banking system, into the formal channels. Now, when the Jan Dhan accounts were being actually, opened, it was also very clear that it was important for people to have access. And brick and mortar banks were not that many. And therefore, what was created was the ecosystem of POS machines. So people could go there and swipe their cards and then get either make payments or, receive cash. Both ways. It worked both ways. The third step, of course, was the QR codes. The Bharat QR codes, the Bhim UPI app that came about, and UPI, as we all know, is one of the best platforms, payment platforms in the world today. Definitely something that other countries want to emulate, because this is something that's working at scale. You were talking about the last mile. If we are handling 6 billion payments in 1 month, I think the last mile is not very far off. In the sense, people are already comfortable about using it. And as smartphones become cheaper and cheaper, using the QR code, anybody, anywhere can make payments. As long as you have mobile connectivity and as long as you are on the UPI platform, making of payments is not a problem at all. And unlike what we used to believe initially, that the rural masses would not, take to it or would not accept it, that is not the case at all. Because today you can actually make payment for the greengrocer, for anybody that you want, or with the QR code in any part of the country. I think, it's a phenomenal revolution that we have seen. Probably it's been speeded up, first by demonetization and second by the pandemic. But it is here to stay. It is something that people have accepted. People now have got used to it. They see how easy it is to transact. They don't want to go back to those days when they had to count cash, they had to keep it safe, they had to go to a bank to deposit it. They are no longer interested in that. That being the case, I think, it's very important for us to understand that the last mile is not far off. The last mile depends merely on the infrastructure, that is the connectivity. If the mobile connectivity is there, the spread of the payment system, it's become so simple, anybody and everybody can do it, it will happen.
All right, so we have about 760 million odd smartphones now. Internet penetration is deep, and as Ms. Bhattacharya puts it, the last mile is not too far away. But Nitin, let me get some numbers from you then. What we saw happen during the pandemic, that surge in digital adoption, is that trend sustaining? What has been your experience of the country's largest bank by far?
No, much of that is sustainable and probably irreversible also. But it's just that many people who were forced into digital payments or digital transactions and still find any amount of friction will have the tendency to go back. Okay, so we have seen the depth of transactions going up during the pandemic. People like us have started to do 10x of the transactions or 5x of the transactions that we were doing earlier. The width has also expanded, which is the new users, but I think it's largely a longish tail with not too much depth. So you would have a lot of people with maybe 1, 2, 3 transactions a month, and I'm talking about UPI only. So there is scope to increase the depth as much as it is to increase the width. But I think one of the things that has been realized over time is that people like us, people who use their bank accounts for what they earn, whether it's business income or salaried income, we have a tendency to use our bank accounts, and that is what we've done. But people who don't use their bank accounts to earn, they earn in cash. It is hard for them to go and deposit the cash in their bank account and then start using a digital payment. So they will always earn in cash and burn in cash. And we see this time and again in the last mile or, let's say the lower income categories where the earnings are still in cash. And I think that is the place where we need to tackle and do something about, because if the payments on a daily basis or monthly basis or weekly basis are being paid out in cash, then there is no incentive for anybody to go and first deposit that into a bank account and then use digital payments. So I think the second or the third wave has perhaps brought us to this level of just under 300 million users. But the next wave of the next 100 million, 150 million will need some structural level changes. Just more availability is probably not going to solve that problem. But coming back to the question on banks, I think banks are certainly seeing, if you look at any banks which are reporting their digital transactions, it's been just going up year after year and not restricted to only digital payments or UPI, but across all payment categories. So we are seeing reduction in the check transactions. We've seen reduction in ATM transactions, partly for the fact that now we have a 2,000 rupee denominated currency note also, which wasn't there earlier. But in general, most banks are upwards of 75 to 80% digital transactions, which is heartening, and it is going up every year.
And Akhil, a quick number from you at Bank of Baroda. What is the percentage of transactions that are done digitally today versus physically?
91% is
91% of all transactions recorded at Bank of Baroda are done digitally today.
That's right. So 91% of all customer-originated transactions are done digitally, and this includes, of course, all digital modes. Your IMPS, UPI, NEFT, debit cards. So that's there.
Okay, interesting you bring up cards, because I was going to Aditya next. You know, in this increasingly digital world, you know, what is the future of plastic? And this is something Shireen again alluded to. I know you say Mastercard is not just a cards company, it's a payment technology company. But inherently, how are you pivoting this business? What do you think is going to be the future where people may not even be swiping their cards anymore, they're just entering some numbers online?
Thank you very much. I think that's a brilliant question. See, it's very, very clear from all what my two panelists have just said that the cashless movement is ahead. I think the first thing we've got to recognize is that cards was, and probably, I hope, will remain the first non-cash option. Okay, so that's the first thing out of the way. The second very important thing is that we must recognize cards are not competing. We are not competing with other options. And there is no one option that can digitize the whole country or the whole payment ecosystem of the country. All of us are playing our relative roles. And in doing so, we are also gaining. Let me give you a small example. The more digital payments are growing, look at the last 10, 11 months, card issuance volumes are at their highest. Card spend volumes are at their highest.
Yet the penetration remains in single digits. UPI is the most preferred form of payment when you talk about small value transactions as well, followed by PPI, and then come credit and debit cards.
Sure.
So, you know, do you think that pie is going to decrease even more from here?
No, I don't think it's going to decrease. I think we have to recognize that people have choice. Okay, there are different instruments. The way digitization is going to lead, digital payments is going to lead, and within that, people are going to make a choice as to which use case they would want to use what instrument on. Okay, look at the large audience here. All of us have our cards, all of us have wallets, all of us have multiple instruments. Tomorrow there will be new instruments that will come. You might have other mechanisms of payment, and this redistribution will continue. The larger play here is to recognize that the overall digital payment pie is growing up, and specifically for cards, you know, look at it. You've got issuance growing, you've got volumes growing, you've got use cases growing. And why that is happening, to some extent, is also because of all the digitization that's happening. There's a credit footprint that's coming up, and therefore the addressable market is also increasing. So I think there's a collaborative effort from everybody which is also impacting cards positively.
Kush, you know, one of the important pieces of this puzzle is merchants and bringing them online, bringing them into the digital fold. In a highly organized country like India, where Kirana still perhaps operate in cash, what has the adoption rate been like? And, you know, with some of the initiatives of the government, of the regulator, what sort of adoption rates are you going to see in the future? What's your, you know, expectation?
I think I would say that most of us are extremely fortunate to be in this digital journey, payments, you know, journey for India, because I feel this is the best time to be, you know, for us to being around. So we guys have been, in that sense, you know, focused only at merchants and digitizing merchants for over 10 years now. And, you know, I could tell you that my own personal experience that 10 years ago, we tried selling a point of sale terminal to a large merchant in, I'm saying like tier A city, right? And the guy would reluctantly sign up for it, and half of the times the guy would actually keep it in a drawer, saying that, you know, if the guy doesn't have cash, you know, and the customer doesn't have cash, and it's insistent on
earn in cash and burn in cash.
Right. So is when I'm going to pull this out. So it was like a, you know, whatever necessary evil in the merchant's life, and it was like brute force sales. But cut to, you know, 2020, what I have seen in the last 10 years is that
I'm no longer talking about that, a metropolitan city merchant. Now I'm actually talking about maybe, let's say, a tier 3, tier 4 market merchant. Like, for example, let's say Rajasthan as a market. Right? I'm not talking about a merchant in Jaipur. I'm talking about a merchant in Bikaner for a minute, right? Or I'm talking about a merchant in a place like Warangal, down south. That merchant today signs up with us. That merchant wants a point of sale terminal. That merchant wants a link-based payment. That merchant wants a QR code. The merchant wants everything. So I feel the way the retailer community has embraced, this whole, kind of wave of going digital when it comes to, driving more footfalls, getting more sales has been phenomenal. I've realized that, they feel that there are all these impediments that come with, handling cash and depositing cash and cost of cash and stuff like that. So I feel that we're just about still warming up. If you look at the landscape of India, it's got 30, 40, 50 million merchants, very large, base.
And how many of them are online now?
So online is also, again, though it contributes to about 25 odd % of, the kind of volumes that come out. But now I think the difference is that there is, the lines are blurring. There is no real difference between online and offline. We have a network of about some 800,000 plus merchants, and more than half of them now already have an omni-channel play. They have an online and offline both. Because what I'm trying to say is that there's no, like the old school thinking that this is an online merchant, this is an offline in-store merchant. Every merchant is as online as offline at the same time. And I think in our experience, we've seen that almost 50% of the new merchants who join our network every month, I think we get some 30, 40,000 merchants every month, more than 50% of the merchants are all tier 3, tier 4 markets. So the infrastructure is expanding. The environment is very conducive because, connectivity, telco costs, that has actually gone down. The government has actually brought in a lot of tailwinds. I feel that there have been few beneficiaries of, of demonetization. Payment companies have been one. And I feel that, there is a long way to go, but I feel very bullish about it.
All right, now that we established that this is a very digital ecosystem that exists in India, Akhil, let me bring to you that question. With more and more payments going online, the threat of hacks, cybersecurity, privacy, phishing, all of that is also coming to the fore. And I recall Mastercard saying at the start of this event, every 11 seconds a business is hacked. How are you addressing some of these concerns?
No, that is one of the foremost concerns that I think every banker has today. Because if we have to grow from about $3 trillion of payments, digital payments, and grow them to about $10 trillion, the fundamental pillar is protecting the ecosystem. And like Madam was saying, we are nearly reaching the last mile. And with that comes tremendous responsibility on the end of the ecosystem players, banks included, to be able to make the customers aware of how to be protected. See, ultimately, the big difference between the erstwhile or the world of the yore of physical is you can only rob as much or attack as much, right? It's going to be either a wallet, it's going to be a physical system, it's going to be a branch, right? But in the digital world, you just have to get it right once, right? And there's no cost of just mounting multiple attacks. You get it right once and you have a big bounty coming in, right? So which is why it is very important that we protect this. And we've been running multiple awareness campaigns. We recently rolled out something called as Pehchan Con, right? And the con being the con man, right? And that's in a very relatable way, because you also have to be able to communicate this to the customers in a very, very relatable way, in a way they understand. Ironically, even as the Chief Digital Officer, I was never able to convince my mom to get on digital platforms till recently. And when she did, one of the first things she got to me was, hey, you know what, I'm so happy, somebody sent me some 20,000 rupees worth of something, and here's the link to be clicked. And I told Mama, don't do this. If you do this, you will end up wiping out many more hard-earned money, right?
No, that is a real problem. Actually, let me bring in Arundhati Bhattacharya for that, because you've often said, you're only as strong as the weakest link in the chain, and that is the consumer. No matter what technology you put in place, digital literacy is equally important as well. Ms. Bhattacharya, what are some of the emerging technologies that are coming around this, the kind of awareness programs that are coming in, and what sort of progress have financial institutions been able to make to tackle this growing concern?
So I think, you're absolutely right that it is awareness that is very much required. And for that, there are multiple things that are going on, including campaigns by the banks themselves, by the payment operators, by the regulator, sometimes maybe by the government also. And the fact of the matter remains that in spite of all of this, confidence tricksters can still get around you. And normally they put in a kind of a bait so that, some amount of people will still bite at the bait, and thereafter, for them it's very easy to hack in. So the only way to tackle this is more and more awareness, taking the people on the journey of what the hackers are doing, getting those stories out in the social media so that people look at it and understand that these are the ways things can happen. But alongside of that, even the institutions themselves need to understand that there are people out there who can easily hack into the system, and therefore it's very important to scan the entire scenario 24/7 by 365 to see what are the threats emanating world over and ensuring that you put in the firewalls to take care of those threats. So in fact, when I was chairing the bank, somebody was asking me what keeps me awake at night. And actually speaking, the expected answer was NPAs. And I told them NPAs don't keep me awake at night because they have already happened. What really keeps me awake at night is cybersecurity threats. Because this is something I don't know what is going to happen, because the people who are trying to, defraud the system, hack the system, they're always trying to be one step ahead of whatever we are trying to do, and we have to, really keep up with the race. So this is something that needs awareness down the line. It needs awareness at the very top as well as at the customer's level. And there is no way that we can let up on this vigilance. This is something that's a continuing effort, and it will continue because as we go more and more digital, the efforts in this area also have to increase at the same pace.
Abhijit, let me bring you on. In another important aspect for digital payments growth in the country is, of course, the regulatory environment. Now, from NPCI, you have rules regarding, how many UPI transactions, for instance, a single player can process. From RBI, you have this discussion paper coming out on whether or not, what merchant discount rates should be. Should UPI be charged at all to the customers? Is regulatory intervention required? What are your thoughts on some of these debates that are emerging? And how would you compare the regulatory environment in India, say, with the rest of the countries that you would be operating in?
It's a great question. And I think to really get perspective, you have to step back. As I said, I've had a lot of experience in Silicon Valley, which has always said this is going to be where the edge of innovation is. And I can tell you, point blank, India is way ahead of the rest of the world in terms of what we've accomplished. From where we were selling POS terminals 10 plus years ago to the type of things that we're innovating on now. So if you step back, any evolution, as long as it's going up and to the right, which we are, and we're accelerating up and to the right, is extremely important. And there will be minor debates as we innovate, test, calibrate, and I think that's what's happening. So net-net, the proof is in the pudding. We all started, in fact, you could say that India's payments ecosystem was behind some of the other markets. And we've zoomed past them. And we are zooming past them on an architecture that's never been seen before. I think we heard Mr. Khan talk about digital infrastructure. It's different. It's disruptive. And hence, we can recreate a digital economy in a way that's completely different than a vertically integrated world that others are working in. Hence, I think we should give our regulators, we should give the ecosystem a lot of credit that we're moving as fast as we can. And one final point. This isn't just one dipstick that we're looking at. The Indian payments ecosystem has been exceptionally resilient in multiple stages. Go back to OTP, go back to chip and pin, go back to UPI, go back to India Stack, now go to India Stack in terms of what we're innovating now and the type of things we're talking about, dematerialized digital instruments. Each stage where the rest of the world fought, we were resilient and innovated and figured it out. And I think that's a credit, and I think it's a natural process of what's happening.
But let me ask you a specific question. As one of the key players in India's digital payment ecosystem, what to your mind is the better approach? A regulatory intervention, setting caps and limits for charges, or let the market participants determine it, as some of the debates that the discussion paper on digital payments has been raising?
Yeah, look, I've got my role in WhatsApp. I was also an entrepreneur in mobile payments in the early days, as Kush was. So we've seen it on multiple fronts, on the merchant side and the consumer side. I think the right answer is collaboration, right? It's not either or as you've kind of painted it, where it's kind of one process or another. So long as we've got calibration, innovation is allowed to grow, but there's communication, collaboration with regulators, which I think has happened.
So you're hinting towards a market-determined rate more than a
No, I'm not. Not at all. That's not a free. I'm not going free market. I think as we're experimenting and pushing the boundaries, it's extremely important for the market, the regulators, and the banks to all work in collaboration to kind of really figure out and calibrate. And I think that's what we've actually done. I mean, think about what's happening here. UPI has fintechs, but powered on top and partnering with banks, with a centralized system, with a very progressive regulatory environment that we're all in. And so I'm saying we've actually got a good model right now. And if you look at the kind of micro, you'll have debates. But the fact that we're having debates on items that are pushing the boundaries and are way ahead of discussions the rest of the world, I think is a good thing.
Okay, Nitin, as the country's largest bank, also one of the key players in the payment ecosystem, what is your sense? Which side of the debate are you on? Free UPI, chargeable? What would enable a better adoption of digital payments in the country?
I would reserve my comments on the considered view from the bank on this topic because the paper is still open. We have time.
Yeah, it is to encourage
debate. It's important to have a considered view rather than my opinion, your opinion, and that becomes like a mainstream discussion point even within the bank. So we're not trying to do that. But I think the point that I made earlier, that if we are really serious about the next 150 million users coming in digital payments, whether on the cards network or on UPI or any other form, much of the UPI growth has happened because of the pricing. All right, we shouldn't deny that. Now, if that is important for the next wave, that needs to be considered. If it seems like that the market has matured and the market will find its own equilibrium, then maybe let the market decide. So I'm not going to give you a straight answer. I'm going to give you an in-between answer because we haven't yet articulated our considered view on this. And I think it's only proper that, when we do communicate with RBI, we state our position rather clearly.
Kush, do you have a position on this?
So again, very interesting debate, right? So the way I look at it is that while, at one level there is this conversation in the paper floating around in terms of, should there be regulation on the kind of MDRs that you charge now on credit cards? So first thing first, there are several markets across Southeast Asia where MDRs are already being capped, right? So it's not that India is the first one who's doing it. At the same time, you have to keep in mind that the same Indian regulator has a corpus of about upwards of about $100 million that they have set up under a fund called PIDF, which is Payment Infrastructure Development Fund, where they're supporting banks and companies like ourselves to go out to the the back of beyond northeasts and the smaller towns and remote cities, right, in terms of laying out the infrastructure. So while at one level they would come back and say that guys, 10 years ago, one point of sale terminal or one merchant would get 15 transactions in a month, those 15 have gone to 150, right? And if you're a payment service provider, if you're a card company, you're making 10 times more money there, right? So it's okay, if we come in and bring in some kind of intervention. So that's the first part. The other part is that if there is so much promise amongst payments companies and banks that digitization is the way to go, we are not going to be depending and generating all revenues from this merchant discount rate and the interchange income. There is this, the big picture view that says that, hey, we are going and this is a financial services platform. The merchant will end up signing up for 10 more products. Why don't you end up making money from the 10 more products? Why do you have to be super reliant on that one income flow, which you started several years ago? So I'm just saying that I'm more in that camp, that if there could be some level of, balancing that can happen. At the same time, it's a bit of a carrot and a stick, right? So they're also coming out and saying, grow, acceptance, I help you. Go lend to customers, to merchants, to go, enable selling of credit cards and insurance and securities. Make money on all of them. By the way, in these kind of products, your take rates are not 1%, you make 10% on a transaction. So I feel the more they go towards capping the merchant discount rate, the more companies like us would be compelled to find, for finding new revenue pools outside of merchant discount rate. So I think it's on in
Will
good spirit.
encourage more innovation in the industry. But Aditya, quick thoughts from you on some of these emerging technologies. We've seen UPI do a phenomenal job. We've seen Bharat Bill Payment System. We're talking about ONDC here. We've spoken about the NETC, etc., so on and so forth. What are some of the emerging technologies that are exciting for India's digital payment ecosystem to look forward to?
I think, commerce is essentially at the forefront of everything. If you look at what's happening on the commerce front, on e-commerce, for example, India's at $50 billion and, $100 billion seems par for the course. And I dare say in probably a matter of, this is going to happen, it's just a function of time, a matter of time. Parallelly, you also have social commerce which is taking off. You have social commerce which is sitting at $1 billion plus, which might end up becoming $10 billion in the next 3 to 4 years. Now, these are platform-led. As we were talking about these itself are phenomenal. Then we have network-led, which we've heard Mr. Koshi and the ONDC team also talk about. They're looking at, just opening up everything, opening up the whole country. So from 5 cities to 100 cities to 1,000 cities. So to my mind, I think opening up the SME ecosystem, opening up commerce, and getting people, which is the first port of call, creating those conveniences, is fundamentally why digital payments is going to fly. The second reason, other important thing which probably one can think is that, these things are easy to get on as long as you know what you need to do. If there is a clear commerce intent, easy to get on, easy to use, easy to get off, and safe and secure. I think because 6 billion transactions, as just like Arundhati said, 6 billion transactions means we're there already. So I think some of these things will really power digital payments into the future.
Okay, let me ask that to Ms. Bhattacharya because, what next? What's next in terms of exciting new technologies coming up? We do have, the government already talking about the regulator introducing a central bank digital currency using that blockchain technology. What are you most excited about when it comes to the future of India's payment industry?
Well, you said it yourself. I think we are looking towards what the central bank is really thinking about in respect of digital currency, blockchain technology. These are things that will really and truly revolutionize the way, we have been thinking about payments. The payment system, not only the payment system, the way we do payments. It almost feels like, we are at that point. Like, for instance, at one point of time, we used to use cowries. And from cowries, we went into metal. And from metal, we went into paper. And from paper, we seem to be at the point where we might tip over into digital. Though I still feel that is a little way away because there are a lot of questions on security, on what would be the value. Will it be, today the way the bitcoins are mined, it's like a commodity. It doesn't have a value that is stable. So what will give that stability? If the central bank alone issues it, will that give it stability? Will it have the same security that you would expect in any other actual cash? But I think, cash itself is evolving. What is the nature of cash? That is evolving. And we are more or less witness to that evolution, which has started and which we expect will go forward. I don't think there is any stopping of this process. When this process will come to fruition and when will you see its overall adoption? That is the bigger question than anything else. But I do believe that, this is a way forward. Change is in the air. You can't stop change. It will happen. It's a question of when and exactly how. Those things, I still don't think the answers are there. People are experimenting with it, but I don't think we still have the answers.
All right. Quick final thoughts from you, Abhijit, before we wrap up. What is the future of digital payments in India? We've gone through several phases. The last few years have been particularly exciting, but it's an ever-evolving space. What do you think is going to last and what will perish from what we're seeing today?
Look, I think we're in the first innings. I mean, despite the amazing success we've had, it's the next 400 million. And I think actually all of the conversations we've had, India's going to lead the world because our ecosystem is resilient, because we solve tough problems, and because we have an architecture with India Stack right now that's converging at just the right time with the tech ecosystem and entrepreneurs, with a very progressive and policy that allows for quick innovation, quick calibration. And as I said, the two very important things right now is people have access, and service providers now have the ability to create a digital journey that's very, very different than the old models. One of the reasons I think we've had this ceiling in terms of financial inclusion or access to the digital economy is because cost structures break down at a certain point. It's just not worth it to get out there, and I think this is a fundamental change right now. So the future of digital payments for us is the next 400 million, solving problems that were up until now thought to be unsolvable. And I think I'll make one final point. Payments is an enabler. What we need is, of course, a cashless economy, but we want a frictionless economy. Right? So frictionless economy is the sum of all of these parts. Access, trust and secure and simple journeys, service providers that are plugged in, and then ultimately the ability to complete the transaction digitally. And when you have that ecosystem coming together, then we're going to solve, that's going to be the end goal, not just digital payments.
Well, yes, and as we heard earlier, solving for pain points is what is the best way to get people to adopt these digital technologies. On that note, all of you, thank you very much for your time. Ms. Bhattacharya, Kush, Akhil, Nitin, Aditya, and Abhijit. Thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for that enlightening discussion. On that powerful note, ladies and gentlemen, we tend to conclude this event. Well, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, while addressing the nation in his Independence Day speech from the Red Fort this year, emphasized that this is India's Techade. He said, and I quote, "India's Techade is here. With 5G, semiconductor manufacturing and optical fibers in villages, we are bringing a revolution through Digital India to the grassroots level." Unquote. He stressed that all this will revolutionize education and healthcare and bring about a change in the lives of common people. He went on to add that the country's science mission and startups are shaping the future of India. With those inspiring words, we have come to the very end of this event. And as we draw curtains on this edition of CNBC TV 18 presents Digital India Vision 7.0, powered by Mastercard, ushering in India's Techade, let me take this opportunity to remind viewers that we at Network 18 have been at the forefront in highlighting the success of Digital India mission through our Digital India Vision initiative, and we will continue to do so in the future in order to strive to promote the inherent potential that lies within a digital revolution and establish a blend of both competitive and collaborative spirit. For making this event insightful and successful, I would like to thank all the esteemed speakers of the evening, and also a very big thank you to all of you for being such a wonderful audience. Please join us for some cocktails and dinner now. Thank you so much.